Welcome back to the channel. This is 20 Storm and you are watching second part of What If Naruto Was the Heir of an Unknown Goddess. If you enjoyed this video, please like, share and subscribe to the channel. Now wasting no more time, let's start the story.
Masaki Azusa's Kirito, the only remaining first generation tree ship in Jiraiya's fleet, is one of the ships. Kirito was the only one who was still able to travel, even though he couldn't brag of being the only one who had a bond with a first generation tree. Yosho was the only other individual who had a bond with a first generation tree, but his Fanaho had already established itself on the planet where he had crashed landed. The enormous Kirito was a ship whose length alone could have filled 3 football fields. Kirito, like all ships built by the Jirai, had an elegant exterior made of wood specially suited to withstand the rigors of space travel. The interior of the ship was just as amazing as the exterior since it revealed a vast forest with trees strewn everywhere. The ship was currently giving off the ideal view of space as it hovered just beyond the planet's atmosphere. Naruto had spent the previous 2 days getting to know his mother's family in this very location. He had been assigned to stay for the time being in one of the many guest rooms on the ship. The room was simple, with just a dresser and 1 bed. The intriguing aspect, though, was that thick vines encircled the bed to divide the rooms rather than walls. The king-sized bed itself featured a curtain for privacy around it. The Sandaime had brought the group to the Heroes Museum the day before. The location was guarded, and Naruto had never been permitted to enter, so in reality, he had never been there before. Once, the academy had organized a field trip for his class, but on the day of the trip, Naruto was turned away by the academy staff for some ridiculous reason he had long since forgotten. In any case, the museum was a tribute to all of Konoha's heroes, spanning all generations and including those who had not only been Hokage but also had left a lasting impression. These 2 individuals who had been granted entry were Naruto's parents. Izoran had made their galleries adjacent to one another, which had pleasantly surprised Naruto. Every gallery featured both a colored picture on the wall and a life-sized stone statue of its subject. A list of accomplishments was next to the photo, and a big book lay underneath it, detailing the background to each achievement. His father was holding a duplicate of his unique 3-pronged kunai, but this one was missing the seal tag. On the other hand, the colored image showed him in his official office robes during his inauguration ceremony. His mother had a dado, which was a copy of her sword. The blade had a solid black color, and the guard's unexpected shape is similar to the kanji character for ban, or full. The hilt is black as well, but it has red diamond designs on it. Ultimately, a brief chain with a broken link hung like a tassel from the base of the sword's hilt. Her colored photo, on the other hand, showed her sitting at Ichiraku's with a happy Tuchi behind her and a young Ayame grinning up at her with her hands resting on her belly, revealing her pregnancy. They had followed the Sandaime to the memorial following their visit to the museum. Izoran had clarified that they had chosen to include the 2 in the memorial even though their bodies had vanished. Additionally, he had said that it was fortunate that their bodies had vanished because it seemed that someone had broken into the Hokage's cemetery a few years prior. He had learned of this only from the disturbances made to the graves of the Shodai and Nidaime Hokages. After that, Naruto had stayed in Kirito to listen to stories about the younger Ichika from his grandmother Airi and his aunt Minaho. He smiled when he heard that both his mother and her twin enjoyed pulling practical jokes, and he proceeded to tell the 2 tales of some of his own more well-known and even lesser-known practical jokes. He had also taken some time to get to know the other family members, and it seemed that he had taken them by surprise when they discovered him shadow sparring in the early hours of the morning. But today, he realized that he would have to go back to the village for another council meeting, which worried him a little. The Leafs Council was reportedly given 2 days to process the information before they met again, according to Azusa. But Naruto was anxious because he had grown up in the village and was aware of how quickly rumors spread there. He did not find it surprising if everyone in the village was aware of his current status or, at the very least, his parentage. The blonde had just finished taking a long bath and was getting ready for the day. Although he had never been in an onsen before, he had to admit he was impressed, finding the bath to be more like a gigantic onsen than anything else. In an attempt to get to know him better, his grandfather had also made the decision to accompany him. He discovered that Yosho exuded a serene aura that simply put people at ease. Naruto had shared some details about his early years and his brief relationship with Haku with him during their conversation. Yosho was an excellent listener, which helped the blonde come to terms with the girl's passing. As a result, the conversation had been very therapeutic for the blonde. He had clarified that his feelings were normal and that it was understandable for him to react that way after going so long without a friend. In addition, he had given the blonde some sage advice about the family. Like to never address Irie as his grandmother in front of her because it seemed like she was very conceited. Additionally, he told him to be wary of Seto because she enjoyed playing matchmaker, even though her relationships always seemed to work out in the end. Additionally, he advised him to try to stay out of Ayeka and Ryoko's fights because they had a tendency to get physical. He shook off his thoughts and looked up in time to see Funaho walk into the room. The woman had been busy the past few days with Misaki, Seto, and Azusa, so he hadn't spent much time with her, but he was looking forward to getting together with her later. "Are you ready?" asked the woman in a composed manner. "Just about." After delivering his return, the blonde reached to the side, took out a harness and fastened it to both of his legs, one of which held a saber claw. At last, he took his tae from the dresser and fastened it to his brow. Observing the weapons the blonde had on him, Funaho sighed. Every non-citizen in this village appeared to be carrying a blade on their person. Funaho didn't like it. In fact, she detested needless violence, but since Furia was a violent society, she wasn't surprised. Nevertheless, she couldn't help but notice that her great-grandson, who resembled his father in the photos she had seen, was a walking arsenal. She would honestly say that given how much they resembled one another, they could have been mistaken for brothers. When she saw he was ready, she briefly put her thoughts aside and walked him out of the room and through the ship to where the others were waiting. The entire village council convened in the council chambers of the Hokage Tower for the second time in a short while. Though the Junin were still present, the genin who had attended the previous time were conspicuously absent. With suspicion, Naruto observed the council members, particularly the three elders who had previously wished for his death but now wished for him to remain in the village for their own benefit. Danzo, also known behind his back as the Mummy, particularly alarmed him. Naruto was already jaded and didn't want anything to do with the man, even though he had made an attempt to become friends with him previously, as far as he could recall. Alright, then I assume that everyone has had time to read and review the information that was delivered previously. Funaho said, drawing attention to herself in the room. Nobody said anything at that point. They just nodded. However, Naruto scowled at that. He was concerned because he was unaware of the proceedings. He was certain that these people would try to manipulate events to their advantage, so he didn't trust them, especially the elders and civilians. So, the goal of our meeting today isn't to discuss the future or even the present. The topic of discussion at this meeting is the past, namely what happened to Ichika, also known as Kushina. Caused a few people to raise their eyebrows in interest as Funaho explained. That's the truth. Nobody is aware of what transpired. Similar to Yondaime. Sama, Kushina. Sama's body was never found. We've always thought that their bodies weren't able to withstand the excessive exposure to the Kyubi's Yuki. One of the civilian council members gave an explanation. That's precisely Ida you're talking about, I guess. To find out the truth, that is why we are here. If you would, Lady Washu. Seto said, gesturing to the red-headed scientist. Of course Seto. Dono. Wasu spoke as she rose from her spot and moved to stand directly behind Naruto, who was seated in the senju seat next to the sandame. We're going to watch the footage of what transpired today. Even though none of you may be aware of what transpired, young Naruto undoubtedly harbors a secret. Declared Washu, shocking everyone including the genin who was blonde. We intend to employ Naruto's genetic memory. The fact that our DNA contains ancestors' memories is a little known fact. Naturally, this is where the concept of Keki Genkai originated. I did some research and found that, if your body has mastered them to an appropriate degree, chakra has given you the ability to pass on to your offspring not only your physical characteristics but also your earned abilities. But memories deteriorate with time, even genetic ones. Ichika was only 254 years old when she passed away, so even with this, we are only going up one generation. Washu gave an explanation. I'm sorry, did you say 254? Inoichi said, shocked. Yes, as I mentioned, rather young. However, given that Tenchi, Dono and Dono are 6 years apart and that their mothers were twins, this is only an estimate. Explained Washu, who didn't seem to be aware of the impact of disclosing Ichika's age. To put it simply, I'll be splitting apart Naruto's DNA code to reveal both his mother's and father's. We'll look into Ichika's after that to find out what transpired. Washu stated, concluding her explanation. She then placed what appeared to be a yellow ball atop Naruto's head. Less than 2 seconds after she sat it down, 2 circles that resembled the machine's feet spread out and attached themselves to either side of his head. When Washu saw this, he reclined in a chair that no one had previously acknowledged existed. She made an outward motion with her hands, and a transparent screen and keyboard materialized in front of her. All right, Naruto. Dono, I'm going to have to put you to sleep for this to work. You will still be able to see everything we do, but it won't hurt you this way. Explained why the blonde was giving Washu a nod. Naruto's breathing slowed down and his eyes closed, indicating that he was about to fall asleep in a matter of seconds. But as soon as he did, something that many shinobi recognized as a seal materialized on Naruto's head and broke with a sound like shattered glass. The machine that resembled a ball and had eyes on top lit up at the same moment, and then it projected outward, hit a wall, and revealed a picture in front of them. Mindscape. Naruto blinked as he found himself standing within a sewer with water coming up to just past his mid-calves. The place was dark, the only light coming from the glowing pipes above him, some blue and some red. Looking around, he found a large golden gate standing in front of him that disappeared into the darkness above him. Hello, Naru-chan. The voice forced him to turn and his breath caught in his throat. Before him stood a woman he recognized easily. She stood at a height of 5 feet 8 inches and appeared to be about 22 years old. She had long bright red hair that fell past her waist, stopping in her calf area with strands framing her face and violet eyes. She wore a pair of black pants that fit to her like spandex and a long-sleeved two-toned shirt with the sleeves, neck, and collar area black while the torso was a burnt orange color. The shirt had a small zipper that zipped it up from the top of her chest to mid-neck. Ka-san! Exclaimed the blonde in shock. Naruto had barely gotten the word out of his mouth before he found himself engulfed within her arms. Naruto tensed almost immediately at the contact before relaxing into her embrace. Still overwhelmed with joy as she was, the woman felt it and frowned before pulling back to look him in the eye. There is so much sadness and pain in your eyes, stated the woman after barely a few moments, causing Naruto to flinch. The villagers must not have treated you well. I've seen that look in your eyes before, it's always held by the same kind of people. Only someone that has experienced the hell that is true isolation can have those eyes. I'm so sorry, Sochi. I never wished this upon you. After saying this, the woman pulled him into an even tighter hug. This time, however, Naruto didn't tense and even wrapped his arms around him as a single unknown tear left his eye. Finally, after a few moments, the woman pulled back, exposing her own tear-stained cheeks, which Naruto was quick to wipe off, getting a smile from his mother. Now there is much to explain and not a lot of time, my son. For starters, this place is what is known as your mindscape. Basically, it is a physical manifestation of your mind. Everything in your past leads to its development. It's a sewer because you lack knowledge, not to say you are stupid, but that there is still much for you to learn. The water beneath us are the tears you refuse to shed, which apparently is quite a lot. As for how I'm here, that would be because of a seal I placed on you when you were a newborn. You see, I knew that one day you would try and access this place, and when you did, the seal would break and allow us to speak. I assume you've been made aware of your true heritage now, right? Yes, Yosho. Oh, informed me a few months ago. The key was sealed in the Forbidden Scroll and I sort of stole the scroll and found it. Explained Naruto, causing Kushina to blink. That's odd. The key was never supposed to be there. Jiraiya should have held onto it until you graduated, at which point he was supposed to present it to you. Said the woman with a frown. Jiraiya hasn't been in the village since I was 3. According to the Sarutobi, Gigi Jiraiya was assigned a high-priority mission. Basically, he's been out of the village checking up on threats to me and eliminating them. Explained Naruto, causing Kushina to frown. Right, anyway, my past is a bit more complicated than what you've been made to believe. There was certain information that I didn't give Yosho. Oh, personally, because it would have been sent out with all the rest of the information and there was a high probability of interception. Stated the woman, catching the blonde's attention, causing him to focus upon her intently. You look so much like your father. You even have his serious face," said Kushina with a smile before returning to her serious demeanor. "My past, like I said, is complicated and I never wrote anything about it down. The only people I ever told the full truth were your father, the Sandame, Sarutobi Izoran, and his wife Bawako, who was the midwife during your birth," explained Kushina. "As you know, I was born Masaki Ichika, daughter of Masaki Yosho Jirai and Masaki Airi. However, I am also Uzumaki Kushina, daughter of Uzumaki Sentaro and sole heir of the Uzumaki main family," said the woman, causing Naruto to blink. "How is that possible?" asked Naruto. "That would be my doing," said a new yet familiar voice. As Naruto turned to the new voice, he found a familiar feminine figure standing before him. A pair of familiar blue eyes greeted him with mirth dancing within them as the woman eyed him in return. Her golden blonde locks of hair still framed her perfect figure, enticing him for but a moment as his eyes focused on her breast before he managed to pull his eyes away. "Kira," greeted the blonde in acknowledgement. "You know each other?" questioned Kushina as she eyed the other woman she'd never before seen. "We met briefly in Nami no Kuni. Her name is Kira, she is Furia given spiritual form," explained the blonde shortly. "So care to explain how my mother's situation was your doing?" asked Naruto. "Well, you see, Naruto, you have a destiny ahead of you, a grand one. Your birth was always assured, and always to Namikaze Minato and Uzumaki Kushina," started Kira, causing both mother and son to narrow their eyes. But then something strange happened. A concussive wave shot through the entire galaxy as if it was all about to be destroyed. In the end, Masaki Ichika's ship crash landed here on Furia just before Konoha was founded. Normally the ship would have been completely trashed with the way her ship was hit, but Ichika is under tsunami. Sama's protection Sai ensured she survived, though her ship was still badly damaged. Anyway, after that about 80 or so years went by. By this point the hidden village system has been adopted and the third ninja war is underway. As scheduled, Uzumaki Kushina is being transported to Konoha when all of a sudden her transport is attacked and everyone killed, which wasn't supposed to happen. Sure, her transport was supposed to be attacked, but they were supposed to make it to the village intact, with Kushina now inspired to become a kunoichi. Instead, everyone including Kushina was dead or dying. I was at loss. Kushina was needed to bring about your birth, and she would also be the new age inspiration for your generation of kunoichi. Then I remembered Ichika was on the planet and sleeping, ironically enough not far from where Kushina lay dying. So I woke her up and guided her to Kushina as she went about her exploration. Thankfully Ichika inherited Tsunami Sama's compassion and was more than willing to help save the girl. With that I put them through what is known as assimilation, which basically means I fused them together. Of course, in the beginning their minds would remain separated as Ichika was a grown woman and Kushina was still a child. As they grew older, however, their minds would merge until when Kushina turned 17 and their minds fully merge. So that is how she can be both Kushina and Ichika. I did however leave the ability for her to switch between them at her leisure as soon as her minds merge," explained Kira. "So it was your voice I heard that day," said Kushina as she looked up. "Hi, however, since you didn't have a connection with Furia you couldn't see me," said Kira. "Okay, so what now?" questioned Naruto after a few moments. "Now your mother can explain what really happened that night," said Kira solemnly. "Very well, Sochi, what do you know about the night the Kyubi attacked the village?" questioned Kushina. "There's not much to know. It appeared out of nowhere and attacked us. It woke me up, I blasted it and Dad dragged it into the Shinigami's stomach," said Naruto, causing both Kushina and Kira to blink. "Sochi, who told you that?" questioned Kushina. "Yosho. Oh, did, months ago when she told me how you died," answered Naruto. "I suppose I shouldn't be surprised you were wrong. Yosho. Oh is badly damaged, she couldn't see what happened, so most likely deduced an explanation," said Kushina with a sigh. With that sigh, however, her figure wavered before she changed. Her hair went from bright red to a midnight blue, almost black color. Her eyes went from violet to brown. Other than those differences, however, she looked exactly the same. The truth is, Kyubi didn't attack so much as it was released and forced to attack. You see, Naruto, the Kyubi has been in Konoha's possession since the very beginning. During the battle that created what is now called the Valley of the End, Uchiha Madara summoned it to aid him. However, Senju Hashirama was able to stop it and defeat Madara thanks to his Mokuton ability. It was because of this that Hashirama was named as Shodai Hokage and not Uchiha Madara, who was assumed to have been killed in the battle. Whatever the case, Konoha took claim of the Kyubi, and so that no one could try that again, it was sealed away. Now you should know that the Uzumaki clan and Senju clan are distant relatives. In fact, many believe that the Senju was a branch family of the Uzumaki. Regardless, our clans were close, and as such Konoha and Uzushio were close. So close in fact that Uzumaki Mito married Senju Hashirama, and even sealed the Kyubi into herself, becoming Kyubi's first vessel. Explained Ichika, causing Naruto to blink in shock at this revelation. As an Uzumaki clan member, she possessed a very high knowledge of Fuinjutsu, as Uzumakis were known for their skill in the sealing arts. However, unknown to most, the Uzumaki clan also had a very special Keki Genkai. The bloodline was so special they couldn't come up with a proper name and simply called it Special Chakra. You see, the Uzumaki clan was blessed with large chakra reserves, but as a trade-off had poor control. Whatever the case, an Uzumaki's chakra is more potent than anyone else's. Along with this, they possessed what was called perfect bodies. They could naturally heal wounds quicker than most with just an application of chakra to the wounded area. Also, if mastered, they could control their bodies to the point that they could change their age, making them younger or older, whatever they wished, and then if they wanted to freeze it there. It was because of this that Uzumaki Mito lived for well over 100 years. She didn't die until well into the term of the Sandaime Hokage. She was 130 years old if I remember correctly. She is only one example of the clan, and it is because of the long lives they lived. Their village was nicknamed the Village of Longevity. Anyway, when I, and by that I mean Kushina, arrived in Konoha, it was for the purpose of becoming the next Kyubi vessel. You see, Mito San was dying by that point and trusted no one but her kin to guard over the fox. Kushina was naturally terrified of such a prospect. She was still a child and had heard horror stories about the monster fox, as it was called. Anyway, Mito managed to calm and reassure her, and Kushina agreed to become her successor. Mito, however, told her of a secret to successfully holding back the fox before the transfer. That secret was that in order to properly hold back the Kyubi and its hatred, you must first fill the vessel with love. Do that and even the host of the Kyubi may live a happy life, said Ichika. Also, something you should know about Kushina: when she was younger she was very insecure. This was mostly due to teasing from other children, and as such she developed a tomboyish personality. On her first day of the academy, she beat up every member of her class that teased her because of her appearance. One day she was kidnapped by Kumo shinobi, who wanted to breed her so that they could make use of her special chakra, even though it was they who annihilated Uzushio in the first place. Regardless, those fools were and probably still are bloodline hungry, and as such kidnapped Kushina. Even with her chakra cut off, she left a trail by leaving strands of her hair to mark her path, a trail that was eventually picked up by Namikaze Minato, who was one of her former classmates. This impressed Kushina, who had actually believed him to have been a wimp. That plus his admittance to liking her hair, which she actually hated, had been enough to convince her to go out with him. When she turned 18, our assimilation was already completed and our minds bonded, and by Kushina's 22nd year we had fallen for Minato and married him, and you were conceived. However, unknown to most, there was a flaw in the Kyubi's seal. The flaw was that the seal would weaken during childbirth. I was led outside of the village where a place had been secured and ready for your birth. Now my pregnancy lasted 10 months, as due to the fact that I was a Jinchuriki there is an extra month added. You were born a week later than projected, but when the time came Sarutobi Bawako acted as the midwife while your father focused on maintaining the seal, said Ichika sadly. You can let him watch the rest, that's why he's here, said Kira. Come again, said Ichika blinking. Basically your family wants to know what happened and are using Naruto's genetic memory to see it, said Kira with a shrug before she snapped her fingers and a bright flash lit the place up. When the light cleared, he was standing on a village street. Looking around him for a moment, he easily spotted the Hokage monument with its 4 heads displayed. Around him were buildings and people, many of which he didn't recognize. Looking around, he blinked in shock, finding his mother standing in front of him under her Kushina guise next to a rather old woman, and a black-haired woman carrying a baby, and Uchiha from the crest he could see on the woman's arm. He instantly recognized the scene as a memory that Kira most likely triggered. Didn't you have a girl? Questioned Kushina, bringing Naruto's attention to the conversation. Nope, another boy, said the woman with a smile. So what's his name, Makoto? Sasuke. Said the newly named Makoto with a smile. He has the same name as Heijiran's father. Stated the older woman. Yes, I'm sure he'll become a fine shinobi one day. You're almost due yourself, aren't you, Kushina? You should pick a name before it's too late. Said Makoto. Ah, we've already got one, Naruto. He and Sasuke-kun will be in the same grade. I hope they'll become good friends. Said Kushina. Yeah, right. Sorry, Mom, but I'm about 2 steps away from killing that Teme. All I need is to figure out a way to do it without getting blamed for it. Maybe a genjutsu to make him write a suicide note, then drowning him. Thought Naruto before shaking his head in a negative. He sucked at genjutsu. That plan would never work for him. By the way, does it hurt? Like bad? Questioned Kushina in a whisper, bringing Naruto back into the conversation. Well, even you're afraid of something. I'll be damned. Said Makoto with a chuckle. Come on already. Exclaimed the old woman before physically dragging Kushina away, getting a laugh from Makoto, who waved her friend goodbye. Remember, we need to keep your berth classified. Try not to talk to anyone while we're on the move, even your friends. Said the old woman, quietly looking at Kushina once they reached a private spot. Right, sorry about that, Bawako. San. Said Kushina, rubbing the back of her head nervously. So that's where I get it from. Mused Naruto quietly. The fact that we're leaving the village for this is classified as well. Don't go screaming your head off, even when the contractions start. Said Bawako. Right. With Kushina saying this, there was another flash before Naruto found himself in a new spot. Oh god, it hurts. Naruto winced at the high volume of the scream, but quickly found himself focusing in on the scene. He could see his mother laid down in front of him, her long red hair positioned in such a way it looked like a flame. By her side he could see his father with his arms outstretched over her stomach, where a large seal could be seen pulsing. Bawako, however, was positioned on the end between her legs, where thankfully a blanket was covering her, as there were some things he just didn't want to know. I've never heard her in so much pain. Are you sure she'll be alright? Questioned Minato, obviously trying to hold his composure. She's fine, just keep your eyes on the seal. Demanded Bawako, not even glancing at him. But Shisa. Good lord, you're the Yondaime Hokage. Don't panic. This is why women have babies, you men can't handle pain. Said Bawako, eyeballing Minato. Before anything else could be said, however, the woman they were fussing over screamed again as her form went hazy, her red hair turning midnight blue and her eyes brown. Her face was covered in sweat as well as holding a grimace of pain. Damn, she couldn't hold the transformation. Said Minato, though he was still focused on the seal. Don't worry about that, I expected this. Besides, she's stronger in her natural form. Damn, this bastard fox is strong. I can feel it struggling to break out. Thought Minato before focusing more chakra through his hands. Naruto, however, was surprised in that he could hear the thoughts as if they were spoken. Hang in there, Ichika, you and Naruto will make it through this. Said Minato. The head's out. We're almost there, Achika. Said Bawako. Keep going, Achika. San. Said Bawako's assistant, who also happened to be a member of the Sarutobi clan. Naruto, you get out here. And Kyubi, you stay put. Said Minato, sweat covering his form before he pushed a little more chakra out of him. Ichika let out another pain-filled scream before another one ripped through the air following right after. Get the hot water. Demanded Bawako, with her assistant immediately complying. Congratulations, it's a healthy baby boy. Said the assistant, holding the baby. Naruto blinked as he saw something on his newborn self that immediately caught his attention. On each of the baby's cheeks were 3 whisker-like markings he was told were injuries from his confrontation with the fox. Look at me, I'm a father. Said Minato as he went about wiping the tears from his face. Naruto, I finally get to meet you. Said Ichika as she looked at her crying baby. Okay Ichika, I know you're exhausted from the birth, but we've gotta get the Kyubi completely sealed away. Said Minato, getting an understanding nod from his wife, who took a breath and shifted back into Kushina. Before they could act on it, however, the sound of bodies dropping reached them along with a gurgling sound. Turning towards the sound, the two were horrified to see Bawako and her assistant both on the ground with a kunai driven through the backs of their necks. Naruto was held in the arms of a figure wearing a hooded and solid black cloak and an orange and black mask over his face. Yondaime Hokage, Namikaze Minato, step away from the Jinchuriki or your son dies at the ripe old age of 1 minute. Said the masked man. How the hell did he get through the barrier? Who the hell is this guy? Thought Minato as he turned to face the man threatening his family. Almost immediately after he did that, Kushina screamed as a portion of the seal on her stomach bloated, causing the Yondaime to turn his face to her. Kushina. Damn it, the seal's not done yet. Thought Minato. Back away from the Jinchuriki. Repeated the masked man, catching Minato's attention. Or do you not care if your son dies? Said the man. Hold it, just calm down. Stated Minato, trying desperately to think of a solution to this new predicament. You should take your own advice, Minato, I'm perfectly calm. Stated the man before tossing the baby in the air. Naruto. Screamed Kushina, horrified. Immediately Minato's eyes narrowed and he vanished, appearing on the ceiling and holding his son as the man had followed through and driven a kunai where Naruto would have been if he wasn't caught by his father. You live up to the Yellow Flash moniker. But what now? Minato didn't waste a moment, immediately going to the blanket wrapped around his son that had 3 explosive notes attached and already smoking. Barely a few moments later and the notes detonated, the force of which was enough to blow the entire place to hell. Minato, Naruto. Exclaimed Kushina upon seeing the notes explode. Minato flew through the air for a few seconds before landing and sliding on his back before coming to a stop on his butt. In the same instant that he settled, he was looking over his son before sighing in relief. Thank Kami you're not hurt. Said the Yondaime before pulling a small but rather thick piece of wood from his leg. He's after Kushina. He forced me to use my Hiraishin no jutsu to separate us. Gotta hurry. With that thought, the legendary Yondaime Hokage disappeared once again, using the technique that made him a legend. When he reappeared, he was within a safe house outside of the village where he and Kushina had often met up while dating to keep their relationship secret, and several Hiraishin kunai were hung. You'll be safe here, Naruto, so be a good boy for daddy while I go and save your mother. Said Minato, looking down at his sleeping son before he disappeared once more, with the older Naruto fading away as well. What are you after? Demanded Kushina from her position secured upon the center rock in a blasted clearing with chains securing her to 4 larger rocks. Naruto recognized the place easily as soon as he appeared as one of the village's more out-of-the-way training grounds, usually used for training water techniques thanks to the large body of water the rocks were submerged in. Her captor stood before her on solid ground, still covered in his black cloak, and seemingly smug, which he wouldn't be if the childbirth hadn't weakened her so much. I came to rip the Kyubi out of your stomach and use it to crush the leaf. Said the man calmly. What? Questioned Kushina, wide-eyed. Minato's jutsu uses a special marking that lets him move from one marking to the next. I see he's incorporated it into the design of your seal. Also that he would always be there to protect you. But I managed to get away from him and the seal has been greatly weakened from the birth. Do you have any idea how long I've been waiting for this moment? Stated the man. As the last bit left him, he shifted slightly, but as he did, his hood moved just enough so that a single eye hole in his mask became visible. Almost as soon as it did, Kushina gasped, as within that eye hole was an eye she instantly recognized, having a very familiar scarlet color along with 3 black tomo markings surrounding the pupil. Sharingan. Thought Naruto in shock. However, at the same moment the Sharingan eye began to spin as it focused on Ichika's own eyes. Deep within Ichika, a pair of crimson red eyes with slit pupils snapped open as a presence hit their owner's senses. Their owner was in fact the infamous Kyubi no Kitsune that currently hung suspended upon a large sphere. Each of its limbs was held down by chains that disappeared into the sphere, as was its head, with the chain traveling along its neck. A large spike was driven into its torso with a chain securing it in place, disappearing into the sphere. Its large paws and feet were secured the exact same way as were each of its tails. You! Snarled the gigantic beast in rage. Immediately the beast began to struggle, fighting its restraints as a malevolent red chakra bubbled forth around it as its struggles intensified. Outside, Kushina cried out as that same malevolent chakra bubbled forth around her in the process of forming a shroud. Come forth, Kyubi! Exclaimed the masked man, his hand held up in a single-handed seal. Almost immediately, like a flood, the red chakra burst out from her, shooting up into the sky and coming together to form the massive beast, which stood at least 300 meters on its hind legs, about 30 on all fours, and roared out. "We head to Konoha," said the man calmly as soon as the beast's roar died down. "Stop," said Kushina, panting heavily as she tried to push herself up. "The Uzumaki clan is really something special. Even wrenching a tailed beast out of your stomach didn't kill you right away. I suppose it's only fitting for the Kyubi to kill its former Jinchuriki," said the man. Immediately afterwards, the beast's left paw came down and descended on her with such force that a dust cloud kicked up that rose higher than even the tallest tree. However, at that moment Minato appeared atop the tree in Kyubi's direct line of sight, carrying Kushina bridal style. "A small flash of hope, but it's too late," muttered the man. "Minato, is Naruto okay?" questioned the woman weakly. "Yes, he's fine. I hid him somewhere safe," said Minato softly. "Thanks, Tsunami," muttered the woman, breathing a sigh of relief for the safety of her son. "Minato, you have to stop Hima, stop the Kyubi, they're heading for the village," muttered Kushina, weakly, panting heavily. At this, Minato's eyes narrowed before he disappeared once more, taking his wife with him. The masked man scoffed at the disappearance but casually shrugged it off before moving on towards the village. Minato and Kushina appeared within the safe house as Minato settled her down onto the floor. "Why?" questioned Kushina tiredly. "Never mind why, stay with Naruto," said Minato as he turned her to her side so that she could see their son. Immediately Kushina reached for her child, tears trailing down her face as she held him. Minato, however, stood to his feet, his face turning to stone as his fist clenched in his anger. Turning towards the closet, he opened the double doors and pulled out and secured a Junin flak vest before pulling out another article. This one, however, was a white haori with red flames decorating the ends. Hat he quickly pulled on the sleeves, only going halfway to his elbows before stopping. Reaching up onto a shelf, he pulled out a spare hite. He kept there with a black cloth replacing the blue, securing it to his forehead. Reaching inside once more, he pulled out a kunai holster and secured it to his leg. The kunai, however, were special in that they were not standard, but each one possessed 3 prongs. Holster secured, he reached in once more before withdrawing a scroll and sealing it within the interior of his haori before closing the doors. "Minato, thank you, a good luck," said Kushina. "I'll be back before you know it," spoke the man before he disappeared once more. When Minato and subsequently Naruto appeared again, it was on the Mont's head on the Hokage monument, both of them looking at the beast with narrowed eyes that was already terrorizing the village. Immediately the beast's head turned towards Minato and narrowed upon spotting him. "So you sensed me already," said Minato. At his words, the fox's mouth opened wide as a ball of chakra began to form between its jaws. As the ball continued to grow, Minato simply watched it for a moment before scoffing. "Not on my watch," said the man, bringing his hands into a seal. As if it was a cue, the beast launched its attack, which quickly inflated to a size matching the beast's head. The ball of power shot off at extreme speeds, only for it to disappear upon reaching its target. "Now then for a safe place to let the blast detonate," said Minato quietly. Almost immediately after he said that, the huge ball of power appeared behind the village, behind even the mountains in the background where no one lived, as it detonated a moment later, bathing the area in its red light and catching the attention of those who weren't already participating in the battle against the fox. "I need to tell the old man what happened," thought Minato. However, before anything else, he brought his left hand around in a backhand, nearly driving the 3-pronged kunai through the head of his masked attacker, who somehow managed to catch the Mont's arm. Almost immediately the area around them began to be sucked in, as if drawn into the Mont's eye, even Minato himself, at least before he disappeared, and the man stopped his technique. He teleported. Talk about fast. "Next time I'll have to warp you the moment I lay a hand on you," said the man. Minato appeared outside of the village once more, where one of his special kunai was plated in the ground, landing on his side. As soon as he was settled, he began the process of picking himself up. My attack slipped right through him, and a moment later he was solid, trying to suck me into some dimension or something. What the hell was that? Thought Minato. A moment later a vortex appeared within the trees before a familiar masked figure emerged from it. Does he use space time jutsu too? Whatever he did, it must be how he moved so far after taking a Chika. He defeated Anbu under the direct control of the Sandaime, got by the most powerful top-secret barrier we have, and must have known the seal would be weak while she was giving birth. Then with the seal undone, he marched right into the village without so much as pausing to deal with the barrier. There's only one man I can think of that makes sense, and even then if my wife wasn't from another planet I wouldn't believe it. Thought Minato. Are you Uchiha Madara? Questioned Minato, causing the man to pull down his hood, exposing short but somewhat spiky black hair and showing his orange and black mask had only a single eye hole. No, you couldn't be, he's long dead. Said Minato after a moment. Oh, I don't know about that. Said the man. On second thought, it doesn't matter who you are. Why have you attacked the leaf? Oh, you know, it's fun. Besides, it's part of my plan to start a war. To bring peace. Whoever the hell he is, it's incredible. He can control the Kyubi, wield space. Time techniques that exceeds both the Nidaime's and my own, and clearly has evil intentions. If I don't kill him now, he'll become an even greater danger than the fox. Thought Minato. If I teleport back to the village, he'll just follow me and things will get even more chaotic. Even if he really is Madara, I doubt he could hold the summon of the Kyubi for very long. I'll just have to leave the village in the Sandaime's hands and finish him off right here. Thought Minato. Just after his thought process had finished, the masked man charged him and Minato swung to meet him with the three-pronged kunai he'd picked up from the ground. Just as Minato's blade was to meet flesh, the mon's body passed through him and solidified just in time for a chain to hit his chest, which the man quickly went to tighten, only for Minato to disappear, having tossed the kunai in order to appear before it. He becomes intangible to negate attacks and then solidifies to counterattack. My only shot is to try and trade hits with him. But attacking at all is a big risk for him. If he can only hold the Kyubi's summon for a short time, he won't want this fight to drag on. It comes down to speed. Whoever strikes a split second earlier will win. With that thought, Minato rushed his adversary, determined to be the victor of their battle. As they rushed each other, Minato tossed his kunai at the mon's face and was not surprised when the weapon phased through him. As the man reached out to grab him, however, a spiraling sphere of chakra appeared in Minato's hand in the mon's blind spot. In an instant, Minato disappeared just as the man's hand was about to touch him and appeared upside down, driving the sphere of chakra into the mon's back, hitting him with such force the mon's body forced the very earth to cave in. Rasengan, intoned both the Yondaime and Naruto as one as the Yondaime flipped so that he landed on his feet, the attack dissipating in mid-flip. Damn it, he teleported to the kunai he had just thrown. Thought the masked man. That was Hiraishin no Jutsu, level 2. Said Minato. In less than a moment, the man managed to disappear and reappear across from Minato, clutching his left arm, where Minato could clearly make out the blood flowing down the limb from his hand. In an instant, Minato was before him, driving a kunai into the mon's gut, much to his surprise. Hiraishin no Jutsu, he must have put that marking somewhere on my body. Thought the man before his eye widened as he saw script forming on him from Minato's unoccupied hand. A contract seal? Are you trying to pull the Kyubi from my control? Said the man. No, I already did. The beast is no longer your weapon to wield. Said Minato. You deserve the title of Yondaime Hokage, managing to wound me and wrestle control of the Kyubi from me in one move. But someday it will be mine again. The fox and this whole world will bow to my will. Many doors are still left open for me. Said the man before he disappeared, his body sucked into the vortex that his eye created. Something tells me he wasn't lying. Thought Minato with narrowed eyes before he disappeared in the next moment. When Minato appeared next, he was standing on the root of a fallen tree near the Kyubi, where he could make out the shinobi of Konoha trying to hold the beast off, led by the Sandaime. In the next instant, there was a giant blast of smoke which quickly cleared to show a giant red toad standing about 30 meters that wore a blue haori and was oddly enough smoking a pipe. Despite the fact that the shinobi beneath him were cheering his arrival to the battlefield, it was drowned out by the masked man's last words to him before he disappeared. I'm sorry, Ichika. Thought the man solemnly before his eyes and face hardened. Hold the fox down for a minute. Said Minato as he addressed the giant toad. Look, I may be big, but I'm not a miracle worker. Said the toad. I just need enough time so that I can build enough chakra to get the fox and that blast out of here. Retorted Minato. However, in the next instant, Minato, Kyubi, and the blast were gone, before the blast appeared detonating in the distance. In barely a few moments, Minato appeared within the trees of the forest, carrying both Naruto and his wife, who had reverted back into her natural state. Gotta put up a barrier, said Minato lowly. My chakra's almost dried up. Despite her retort, however, in the next instant chakra burst out from her back, which quickly took the shape of chains and in no time went about pinning down the fox limbs, tails and all. As the beast fell to ground, shock with such force the baby Naruto was immediately awoken and began to cry. Sorry Naruto, I didn't mean to wake you, said Ichika, panting heavily. Ichika, stated Minato in shock at her action. I'll drag the Kyubi back and die with it inside of me. That'll prevent it from coming back for a while. It's the only way to save you both, with the little bit of chakra I have left, said Ichika, panting heavily all the while. Thank you, for everything, said the woman, smiling despite the state of her body and the dried blood from that had come from her mouth. Ichika Yua, you made me your husband, you made me into the Yondaime Hokage, you made me this boy's father, and Ia, said Minato, only to be cut off. Don't look so sad Minato, I'm happy. I'm happy that you loved me despite everything, that you didn't reject me, that it's our son's birthday. If I try to imagine surviving and the three of us living together, I can't think of anything beyond, I'd be so happy. If I had any regrets, it would be that I won't get to see Naruto grow up, said Ichika, smiling. Ichika, you don't need to take the fox down with you. We can use our last bit of chakra, so that we can see Naruto one more time, said Minato with tears streaming down his face. Huh? Questioned Ichika. I'll seal the last of your chakra within Naruto with an 8 trigrams seal. Then I'll lead the Kyubi away and finish it with a seal only a non-Jinchuriki like me can use, the Shiki Fuin, Dead Demon Seal. Minato, you can't, using that you'll be. I'll only be able to seal half of the Kyubi's power. It's just too great, it's physically and conceptually impossible to completely seal it all. I can't let the Kyubi be revived without a Jinchuriki, the balance of the Biju would be destroyed. But with the Shiki Fuin I can permanently seal away half of its power along with myself. And the remaining halfa, stated Minato, cutting himself off as a memory of a conversation with his sensei hit him. You know, you might actually be the destined child, said Jiraiya. The what child? Questioned the teenage Minato. Sometime in the near future our world will be faced with disaster, stated Jiraiya. And the destined child will be its savior, thought Minato as he looked upon his son. Still he continued his sentence. I'll seal the remaining half within Naruto, said Minato, finally causing Ichika's eyes to widen. I know what you want to say. But Jiraiya Sensei spoke of the world undergoing a revolution, and with it a great disaster. Tonight I've come to suspect 2 things. The first is the masked man that attacked us, he is the harbinger of that disaster. It will be Naruto who will be the one to stop him. The Jinchuriki that will blaze the trail to our future. I just know it, said Minato, turning to face his sleeping son. But Minato, started Ichika, only to be cut off by the man who'd already finished his chain of seals. Have a little faith, he is our son after all, said Minato before announcing the name of his technique. After I finish placing the seal, I'll place your remaining chakra into Naruto as well. You'll meet the grown-up Naruto sooner than you think. The time will come when he'll attempt to take control of the fox's power, you'll need to be there to help him. Minato, he's our son, exclaimed Ichika. That's why. I don't want him to bear such heavy burdens all on his own, explained Minato. But why the Shiki Fuin? There's no reason for you to die just so I can meet him for a few minutes when he's older. I wanted you to be there for him, I wanted you to raise him. So why are you doing this? Why are you sacrificing Naruto just to preserve the balance of the Biju, to save this village or even this country? Why are you sacrificing yourself for me? Exclaimed Ichika in tears by the end. Turning one's back on your country or village is just as bad as abandoning a child. You should understand, you saw Uzu, your country, fall apart. You know the pain of growing up without a home of your own, and you know that we are a family of shinobi, said Minato calmly. Besides, even if I lived I could never substitute for you. There are things Naruto needs to be told, things I could never say myself. That is a mother's job, and I need you to carry it out even if you only have the briefest of moments to do so. This isn't just for you, this is for Naruto. No child should grow up with no memory of their mother. Besides dying to make a better life for his child, that's the stuff you let the father handle, said Minato. With that he summoned a small altar with candles surrounding it and a small mattress in the center which he placed Naruto on. However, before either of them could move, the fox roared as it managed to lift its massive right hand and moved to bring it down on the small family. Ichika and Minato went wide-eyed, seeing it was aimed directly at Naruto, and both moved to jump in front of the boy. Unexpectedly, a sound resembling metal clashing was heard in the next instant, and both were surprised when the pain never came. Turning their heads, both were shocked to see what appeared to be 3 shields made of pure chakra holding off the beast attack. Even the Kyubi itself stopped tilting its head as if in curiosity at the sight. "Impossible, Lighthawk wings, but how?" muttered Ichika in shock. Turning back towards Naruto, they were surprised to find the baby boy awake and staring at the fox, the boy's blue eyes glowing. Suddenly the 3 pieces began to widen before it quickly took the shape of a circular shield with an indent in the center. Blue energy began to gather into the indented portion, quickly forming a small but steady growing ball of energy as the now rounded shield folded back. In less than 3 seconds the ball was quite large, and a hole appeared where the indent was before. The ball of power shot forward straight through the Kyubi's paw and the limb attached before hitting the body and exploding, leaving laid out in front of them. The older Naruto was the only one to see Kira pump her fist with her other hand on the baby's head. Despite what had just happened, both parents were quick to snap out of their daze. Almost immediately an ethereal arm shot out of Minato's stomach and into the fox before pulling some chakra back with it, which was quickly pulled into the mon's stomach before a seal flashed into existence. As the baby Naruto began coughing, both parents turned their attention to him to find he coughed up a small amount of blood. Turning back to his parents, he was just in time to see his mother finish a chain of hand seals before a seal appeared on the baby's stomach. Before it faded away instantly, the baby stopped coughing and fell asleep. Minato quickly flew through his own seals at a breakneck pace. A moment later, and a toad about half the size of a full-grown man appeared in a puff of smoke, sitting with its legs folded beneath it. "Ah, the Kyubi. And Minato, what the hell happened to you?" exclaimed the toad. It was to this scene that the Sandaime arrived in full battle gear along with a crew of shinobi. "Gamatora, I'm entrusting you with the key to the seal. Hurry and take it to Jiraiya. Sensei, store it with him." "I see, he intends to save the village by making his son the new Jinchuriki," muttered the old man. "Got it, goodbye," said the toad sadly before it disappeared before Minato grunted, coughed and spit up blood. "It's time for me to go, Ichika. I'm going to perform the 8 trigram seal and try to leave some of my own chakra too." "We don't have much time if you have anything left to say to Naruto," said Minato, getting a nod from the woman. Ichika kissed him briefly before lying down beside her son and saying a few words in the baby's ear before kissing him, crying all the while. As she finished, Minato spoke up and told the boy to listen to his motormouth mother, which got a smile from the sleeping baby before there was another burst of light. When the light cleared, he was once again in the dreary halls that made up his mindscape, sitting on top of the water with silent tears trailing down his face. Kira stood before him while a pair of arms was wrapped around him from behind, telling him where his mother was. "How is this possible? I was scanned for any signs of the Kyubi after I graduated and they couldn't find anything," said Naruto after a few minutes of silence. "Well, as you know, you are one of the last true Furians, as Furian blood flows through you as does Furian energy. Because there has never been a true Furian Jinchuriki, certain things are different with you. The Kyubi is there behind the cage and suppressed by your own power. When your Jurian abilities were unsealed, the 9 tails was further suppressed. You actually almost woke it up during the battle in Nami, but you managed to control your rage and summon the pets I gave you. Over the past decade, the seal has been constantly converting the Kyubi's chakra, allowing your body to absorb it at a slow but steady rate. This you can see in the pipes above us, the blue ones representing your chakra network and the red ones the Kyubi's chakra. One day all of these pipes will be blue," said Kira. "So why me? Why all this?" questioned Naruto quietly. "That's a story for another time, Naruto. Kun. You've learned much today, you need to digest it. I'm sorry to say this, but I have to cut your reunion now. I'm a spirit, not a goddess. I've been using my own energy so that your mother could speak to you. Too much longer and her own chakra will start draining, and you'll need her aid in the future," said Kira sadly. "Naruto, listen to me. I need you to take up Kenjutsu so that you can wield my sword Zangetsu. It is an heirloom passed down to the head of the Uzumaki clan in every generation. The clan is scattered now, but any of them, even the branch members, will follow you should you possess it. It, along with every heirloom I had including the clan scrolls, is safely stored aboard Yosho. Oh. There is so much more I wish I could do for you. I love you so much, said Ichika crying softly before her body faded away leaving only the lingering feeling of her touch with her son. You said I have a destiny, said Naruto standing slowly. That you do, and it is a grand one. I can see the signs all over you. I can't however tell you what it is as the future is not set in stone but decided by one's own actions, said Kira. I wouldn't have believed you anyway, I create my own destiny, said Naruto. I'd expect nothing less from you. I'll see you soon Naruto-kun. With that Kira faded away leaving Naruto alone within the mindscape staring into the cage that apparently held the Kyubi. Walking up to it he stood so that he was just before the bars of the cage. I don't know if you can hear me Fox. However it seems you and I have a common enemy, a certain Uchiha we both want dead. The only question is do you want his death as much as I do? Stated the blonde before he too faded away missing the single slit pupil having red eye that opened after his departure before closing once more. Perched atop the Hokage monument, blue eyes gazed over the village with impassiveness. He had woken up and wasted no time in leaving the council chambers, not even looking at the other people there. As Kakashi approached to take his place next to him, he didn't even bother to glance at the area there. They stood there in silence for a few minutes, staring down at the village below, unaware of what had just been found. Eventually, though, the silence was broken. You know I'm not surprised, the blonde said, startling Kakashi with his remarks. Those idiots have always been the source of my misery. My issues were always caused by someone from that dreadful clan, no matter what. After scowling at these remarks, Kakashi followed the boy's gaze until it eventually ended in the Uchiha district. He could see that the boy, who was currently the closest thing he had to family, had his fists so tightly closed that blood was dripping down, and that his eyes had become hellishly slitted but still maintained their blue hue. I wouldn't be shocked if those bastards were involved in this. There are only 3 left, and if I have my way, they will all be dead by the time I depart from this world. The boy surprised Kakashi by jumping over the ledge, and as he did, he caught a pole that he would not have noticed otherwise. He then let go and repeated the process until he landed on a rooftop. The copy nin sighed, shaking his head at the boy's insanity, and then erupted into smoke. Once again inside the council chambers, Washu leaned forward into her screen, her fingers caressing the keyboard's keys in a way that only she could. She was busy because her attention had been drawn to something else, while everyone else was still processing what had been shown. At last, she reclined and let out a sound that caused everyone to turn their heads, noticing the small framed genius massaging the bridge of her nose. Sasami, come here. Genius called, gesturing for the girl to come over. Washu gestured for her to look at the screen as she approached, and she did so, reading it over before letting out a gasp that caught everyone in the room by surprise. Seto asked, is there something wrong, Lady Washu? There's something very wrong Seto. Dono. Washu sighed as he said. I've seen the energy signature of the Kyubi before. Though disjointed, it's unquestionably something I've seen. The genius frowned as she spoke, drawing everyone in the room's immediate attention. Yosho asked, what do you mean fragmented? Well, there once was a magnificent beast. The Chosen created this beast with the intention of protecting the universe in its nascent stages. The beast accompanied the Chosen whose eldest daughter had gone off one day. The beast, it seems, was abandoned here by her and has since broken into 9 pieces, each of which seems to be sealed inside a different person. Following this declaration, the Jurian people in the room had wide eyes, while the others were just confused. One person, though, who seized the opportunity to speak up, was not. That person was Sandaime Hokage. Great, you're talking about them. The old man sighed and, disobeying social norms, took out his pipe and lit it with a quick flick of fire chakra. One of the civilian council members asked, you know what she speaks of? Everyone does. She is discussing the Biju. The Sandaime said, bringing the Indians to silence. Ayeka asked, what are these Biju you speak of? For as long as history exists, there have been 9 tailed beasts roaming this planet. They are collectively known as the Biju, or Q no Biju. They are all chakra monsters with a set number of tails, just like the Kyubi. Ichibi no Shukaku is the first, followed by Nibi no Bakaneko, Sanabi no Kyodai game, Yanbi no Saru, and Gobi no Urukama. Then come the most formidable of them all, the Kyubi no Kitsune, followed by the Rokubi no Namakuji, Nanabi no Kabutomushi, and Hachibi no Kyogyu. Hiruzen gave an explanation. Sasami asked, "What are we going to do?" "We'll remove them from these people, of course." Washu said quietly. "That won't be feasible, Lady Washu. Not only would these beasts be taken prisoner by other villages, but the extraction process would kill the containers themselves. After that, you'll invite everyone to attend these tests of yours. They can actually travel with the other world leaders. Aside from that, I promise you that this won't kill them," Washu stated while glaring sternly at the Hokage. "Besides, their power cores seem to be destabilizing. If this keeps up, this planet will be destroyed in a massive explosion that will be felt all the way to Earth." "Are they really that powerful?" Tenyo nervously asked. "When combined, they are the pinnacle of the three powers. Only a small portion of that raw power each is possessed by Ryo, Oki and Ryoko, and just look what happened to Jirai when they were set on it." Ryoko gave Washu a sheepish back rub for saying that. "Even if you could remove them, we'd have to reseal them as they're too dangerous to let wander around," stated Kaharu, one of the Sandame's former teammates. "Oh, don't worry about that, I already have something in mind for them," said Washu with that devious smirk that always graced her face whenever she had a really good idea. Slash, duck, slash, weave, kick, block, slash, weave, slash. The actions repeated in random order as Naruto darted through the numerous clones he created within the training ground. His Yulax, or saber claws as they were popular called, were a blur as he dispatched clone after clone. The training was almost therapeutic in a way, yet he still saw Sharingan eyes in each clone he dispatched. There was no mercy or hesitation in his movements, only fluid, brutal effectiveness. Finally, the last of his clones fell to his blades disappearing in a puff of smoke, allowing for him to come to a halt. He panted, sweat dripping from his form as he mentally dispersed several more clones that he had training ninjutsu not far off. Zabuza had given him a small scroll with water ninjutsu and manipulation exercises, though he'd apparently made it a point to slip it into his bag along with Haku's mask. He'd only just discovered them as he hadn't been to his apartment until after he left Kakashi that morning. Raising himself from his slightly hunched-over position, he sheathed the blades. He couldn't do more than that, however, before a new presence made itself known. "Those are some nice blades there," said Kakashi, making his way over. "They were a gift. Haku-chan thought they would fit my style," returned the blonde. "We'll have to work them into your taijutsu training then. Anything else I should know?" questioned the man. Naruto was silent for a moment in thought at this question. On the one hand, he knew that due to his relationship with his father, Kakashi thought of him as a nephew. Since they'd been placed together, the man had not only been doing his best to train him but to get to know him as well. Despite this, he knew of his sense of independence and respected it. However, he was also his superior, and withholding information, even something he thought of as minor, had consequences. Shrugging mentally, he made a mental note to copy down the scroll and spoke up. "Zabuza apparently snuck a small scroll of water jutsu into my pack." Kakashi inwardly winced at that as he knew he got off lucky. It was only Naruto's luck that he and Haku had been so close, as he knew that that could have easily been something far more devious and lethal the man could have prepared. With that, he made a mental note to check the packs of his students before returning from any mission outside of the village. "Alright then, I'll need to look it over, but you'll more than likely be allowed to keep it. However, if there are any jutsu that the village doesn't have, they'll most likely be copied." At these words, Naruto merely nodded his understanding, as he could tell that was as good as it was going to get, or could get for that matter. However, judging from the man's stance, he could tell he had something else on his mind and thus kept quiet. "I don't know a way to sugarcoat this, so I'll just be blunt," stated Kakashi, causing the blonde to raise an eyebrow. "Lady Washu believes she can remove the Kyubi without it affecting you negatively," said Kakashi. "Interesting." Shimura Danzo scowled as he sat within his office within his underground headquarters. For the past few days, he'd been having everything but the kitchen sink thrown into his plans. For over a decade, he had been working for the sole purpose of acquiring the Kyubi vessel for himself. Yet now, after all that time, planning, and subtle manipulation, it had all proven to have gone to waste. The stirring of the masses to hate the boy, the stirring to keep the memories of the Kyubi attack lingering, having him kicked out of the orphanage, the beatings, the sabotage at the academy, Hell, even his treatment at the marketplace had all been planned out carefully and had gone to waste. He had known the boy was special and related to the Yondaime. He looked too much like the bastard for him to be anyone but his son. Where most would have been discouraged with this, he'd seen an even bigger target which would have made an even greater weapon at his command. However, he had never thought the boy would have been related to the Nidaime. This was worse than him being the son of the Yondaime for him, as he was the last of the Senju clan, one of the founding clans of the village. Even worse, the boy's mother had been a princess, in turn making him a prince. A prince of an empire that spanned not countries but of planets, with their own sitting right within that sphere of influence. If that wasn't enough, then not only did they want to remove the Kyubi from the boy, but they wouldn't be sealing it within another vessel period. Keeping the Kyubi in the village had been the sole motivation for him selling out Uzu no Kuni, as it would ensure there would be a Jinchuriki more loyal to Konoha than anywhere else, unlike the previous two. He needed to figure out a way to salvage this situation in a way where things would come out to his advantage. His thoughts were broken as a black-garbed individual appeared before him, bowing on one knee. Danzo. Sama. Hyo has returned from his mission in Ta no Kuni, land of rice fields. Hyuga Hinata was on cloud 9. The past couple of days had floated by in a daze for her. Such was her mood that she wasn't even bothered by the derogatory slurs against her from her elder cousin Neji nor her little sister Hanabi. Her mood was so good she had been flying through her training and even beat her little sister in a spar for once. What was the source of her good mood? The answer was pretty simple: Naruto. Though they had never really spoken during the academy, the two of them, or rather Naruto, had forced her to take time so they could get to know each other after they had graduated. She had always held an infatuation with the blonde. Even from the first time she saw him, something had drawn her attention to him. However, she had never felt she could act on or make her feelings known. She was the heiress of the Hyuga clan, no matter how shakily she held onto the title, and Naruto had always been a no-name orphan and even worse, the village pariah. That, however, was different now though. Now it had been revealed he was the son of the Yondaime Hokage, the greatest her the village had ever known. If that wasn't enough, he was the grandson of the Nidaime Hokage Senju Tobirama, which due to a series of tragic events made him the last heir of the Senju clan. Even more, he was a prince, a real honest Takami prince. She didn't even have to make her feelings known, as already her father had written up a marriage proposal for her and sent it to the Hokage. She knew she didn't have much competition within the village either, at least from any prominent clans, and even if she did, it was apparently normal for males of his family to have multiple wives. Within the village, her only competition would be Inuzuka Hana, the heir of the Inuzuka clan. None of the other clans had a female heir around Naruto's age to her knowledge, and Ino wasn't even acknowledged as heir to her clan yet. So yes, she had a very good reason to be happy, especially considering she was pretty sure that Naruto would accept her. He would undoubtedly ask her first, but he would accept her as soon as she made her feelings known. All she had left to do was build up her courage and figure out the right words to say, and she would be married in no time. The cherry on top would be that all of those stupid Uchiha fangirls would have to eat their words when it happened. After a few hours of training with Kakashi, Naruto had found his mood had improved considerably. He knew he got the most hands-on training from Kakashi, but he worked mostly on taijutsu, which was a hands-on activity. He knew Sasuke was focused on ninjutsu, as that's all the Uchiha wanted, more and more jutsu which could be learned from scrolls. Kakashi had pointed Sakura in the direction of genjutsu and medicine, and apparently the girl still hadn't made her choice on which path she would take. He himself didn't really care as long as she wasn't a burden for much longer. Still, Kakashi had worked with him to incorporate his Yulax into his taijutsu, and while admittedly not a knife fighter, Kakashi had helped him learn a lot. As promised, the masked Junin had left with the ninjutsu scroll from Zabuza, which he didn't mind since he was really only working on the first manipulation exercise at the moment. The exercise involved coating his hand in water and trying to get the liquid to stick. Of course, this was secondary to his real work of learning wind manipulation. While he only made 5 clones for water, he had made 20 for wind. While he could have easily made more, he saw no point in rushing things at the moment, as that would only stress him out. Shaking himself out of his thoughts, he realized he'd already arrived at his apartment. Shrugging, he unlocked the door only to be surprised by finding Washu, Seto, Funaho, Masaki and Sasami inside, sitting on his couch and in the chairs drinking tea. "Well, now this is a surprise," muttered the teen as he closed the door. "We wanted to speak with you without interference from the others," said Washu calmly. "So what would you like to speak about?" asked the blonde, taking a seat upon a stool he set across from her between Seto and Sasami. I'm sure by now that you've heard that we plan on removing the tailed beast from their containers. Said Washu. I heard and I don't see it happening. Not only will the hidden villages not allow it, but I doubt any of their containers would like to die no matter how much their life sucks. Said the blonde. The process will be painless, I assure you. Though it is no, as I've told this village's council. Said Washu, getting a raised eyebrow from the blonde. In truth, while I will remove them from your bodies, I can't say that there will not be unforeseen effects from this. Because they are fragmented, I cannot create bodies for them unlike I did for Ryo, Oki and Fuku here. It was only then that the blonde noticed the two cavets that took that moment to run from behind his couch and jump into his lap. This was definitely a surprise, as he knew animals feared him, and if not were simply wary of him. The only ones he hadn't seen hesitate before this had been the 3 hellhounds Kira had given him. So what will you do with them then? Questioned the blonde. That's a surprise, but I guarantee you'll love it. Said Washu mischievously. Before we can do that, we will need to do a preliminary scan of your body, which worked perfectly since those would have to be done before you could leave this planet for Jirai anyway. Said Washu, getting a raised eyebrow from the single male in the room. It is a galactic policy set in place to prevent the spread of diseases to other planets. While we have cures for just about every disease, this still helps prevent their spread. Explained Funaho. After the procedure, Sasami will act as your nurse. Said Washu, causing Naruto to narrow his eyes. You make it sound as if I'll be weakened greatly. If that's the case, I'd have to decline. I have no intention of being assassinated now that these idiots know of my lineage, and I guarantee that there will be attempts. Said Naruto seriously. You'll have no need to worry about that. The procedure will be done in my lab, which cannot be reached unless they can pinpoint the exact subspace. No one will even know when it's happening if you don't want, as I can set up a portal right here in a closet if needed. The galaxy at large has been trying to access my lab for centuries and hasn't come close even once, so I'm positive no one here will be able to. Explained Washu, getting a nod from the young man at that. Also, having Sasami as a nurse isn't because of a fear you'll be weakened, but so that you can get to know each other. Said Seto, speaking up for the first time, getting a raised eyebrow from the blonde. Naruto. Kun, you have a very special ability, one which only Tenchi seems to share with you. Said Funaho calmly. The ability she speaks of is the ability to summon light hawk wings without the need for a Jirian power source such as a tree ship. Even though you only showed this ability once as a newborn, you still have it, and that alone gives you a greater chance to take the throne once Azusa steps down. Officially speaking, you're the 3rd in line, and have been since you were born, making Sena the 4th now that we've found you. However, the Jirian people would never accept an outsider to take the throne. It would be like the people here having a Hokage from outside the village. However, this can be worked around in a way which has already been shown to work. Explained Funaho after sipping her tea. The way is for someone the people know to also be on the throne. That is where Sasami comes in, since if the two of you marry it will be acceptable. Explained Seto, getting a frown from the boy. And what is your stand on this, Sasami? San? Questioned Naruto. I actually already agreed to do it. Said Sasami with a blush. Still a wedding want TB for a few years, as neither of you are of legal age to do so. Said Masaki with a giggle. Well, technically speaking, I can get married on this planet. Seeing as to how I'm a shinobi, I'm legally an adult, so if I wanted I could get married at any time. The only thing that's really frowned on is drinking. Still, I had no plans to do anything of the sort anytime soon. Said Naruto thoughtfully. While that may be true here to the galaxy as a whole, you are still but a child. In galactic standard, you cannot marry until 16. Explained Funaho, getting a nod from the blonde. Another thing, we have received a few marriage proposals from members of the council. Most notable were the Hyuga head's daughter Hinata, and the Inuzuka head's daughter Hana. Said Masaki. Really? Well, I'll have to talk to Hinata and see what she thinks about it. I don't know the Inuzuka, but I know her brother, he used to be one of my associates in my pranking days. Said Naruto. Very well, the decision will have to be made before you leave this planet. Said Seto seriously, causing Naruto to nearly gulp. On another note, as the heads of Jiraiya's government, Azusa, Masaki, Seto, Sama, and I must return soon, as we cannot be absent too long. We will be leaving after your procedure and return in time for your exams. Before that though, we must go and retrieve your parents' bodies so that they may be laid to rest properly. Explained Funaho. Alright, I'll take a quick shower and meet you at the village gates, said Naruto after a few silent moments. A single figure made his way through the crowded streets at a brisk pace. The figure was a tall man standing 6 feet 2 inches in height and weighing nearly 200 pounds of muscle. The man in question had extremely long and spiky white hair tied back into a ponytail, with 2 shoulder-length bangs that framed both sides of his face. He also had red lines that ran down from his eyes and wore a horned forehead protector with the kanji for oil in the center. He wore a green short shirt kimono and matching pants, under which he wore mesh armor that showed out of the sleeves and legs of his outfit. His outfit was completed with handguards, a simple black belt, and a pair of geta on his feet, a red haori worn open with 2 simple yellow circles, and a large scroll secured to his back. He was currently walking through the streets of Crater City, and while he would normally stop to enjoy the festivities, this wasn't one of those times, as this was one of his serious moods. Because of the festivities the city had frequently, he was able to blend in quite well, and as such was just another face in the crowd despite his celebrity. Finally he reached his destination seemingly as he entered a door to reveal the place to be a bar. Scanning the place, he smirked before moving over to a table and taking a seat across from a buxom blonde woman while trapping a young black-haired woman beside him. "What do you want, Jiraiya?" questioned the blonde woman with narrowed eyes, especially when seeing his own serious orbs. "I received an emergency message from Sensei a few days ago, Tsunade," started the man calmly. "This message, simply put, was an order to return to the village," stated Jiraiya. "And what's that got to do with me? I haven't received anything from him in years," said the woman. "Apparently you were dodging his messengers." Long story short, Ichika's family arrived for her son. Sensei would like us to be present for a meeting the day after the Chunin exams 3 months from now. Apparently he is also the grandson of Senju Tobarama, explained Jiraiya. "Jiraiya, Ichika's son, died after the Kyubi attack," said the woman with narrowed eyes. "Where do you hear that? I raised the boy myself for the first 3 years before I had to leave him in Sensei's care. Even now I keep tabs on him. In fact, he just returned to the village from his first C-rank mission to Nami no Kuni," explained Jiraiya. "I received a message from the elders after the attack saying he died during it," said the woman, causing Jiraiya's eyes to narrow. "I see. I'll inform Sensei of this personally. I'll also be sticking to the village the month leading to the 3rd exam so I can get some time with him," said Jiraiya. "I guess I'll see you in a few months then, pervert," said Tsunade as the man stood up to leave, causing him to pause. "You know I'm only this way because you refused to marry me." "Ya ne Tsunade. Haim, Shizune. Chan." With that, the Jiraiya, the legendary Toad Sage, left the building, leaving 2 shocked women in his wake. The journey had been made quickly to the spot where Yosho-O's tree landed. The crash site itself was only 20 minutes away from Konoha by carriage. It had been the first time he'd actually ridden in one, and he was pretty certain there wouldn't be many more. Due to the large number of people, several carriages had been needed, though he'd have rather leapt through the trees. Despite this, there were also several Junin, including Kakashi, Sarutobi Asuma, Maeda Gai, and a pair of Chunin named Higane Katetsu and Kamizuki Izumo. Naruto sat in the first carriage alongside Yosho, Irie, and Sasami. With Yosho's advice, he'd been able to use the gem on the key to locate the crashed ship, which took the shape of a giant redwood tree that they now stood before. "The Great Tree of Fire," said Izumo in awe. "You know it?" questioned Naruto. "I've never actually been here before. However, the story is that the tree is actually older than Konoha itself, and nothing could touch it, even ninjutsu," answered the Chunin. "That's true. I remember during the war there was a battle here and not even an earth dragon could put a scratch on it," said Guy. Naruto was impressed by this but walked up to the tree's base and began walking around it until he finally stopped just to the left of the group. Holding up the bracer, he could see the gem pulsing rapidly, and after some mental prodding by Yosho-O pushed his hand forward, with it disappearing inside of the trunk. Turning his hand to the right, an audible click could be heard before a white doorway appeared within the tree trunk just in front of him. "Okay, I've seen a lot of stuff since I became a shinobi, but that right there takes the cake," said Katetsu, getting a nod from both Izumo and Asuma. Naruto didn't waste a moment and stepped inside, followed quickly by the rest of the Masaki clan, and action the group of Konoha nin was quick to repeat, with the door fading away as soon as the last entered. The place they entered was a large grassland that Naruto recognized from the night he stole the forbidden scroll of seals. Not long after they entered, a transparent figure appeared looking exactly like Ichika. "Hello everyone, I am Yosho." "Oh. Prince Naruto, I'm happy you finally came to visit, and I'm happy to see you as well, Prince Yosho and Lady Airi," stated the AI with a bow. "Hello Yosho. Oh, thank you for taking care of Ichika and Naruto," said Airi. "It was my pleasure and honor, my lady. I have kept Princess Ichika and Lord Minato in stasis as directed in preparation for this day. If you would all follow me." With that, everyone followed her as they made their way through the ship. He ignored the conversation that the Junin and Shunin were having. It seemed the place mostly because he'd thought similar things himself when he'd first seen it. Finally, they came to an area that was blocked off by a wall of vines that quickly parted to allow them entrance. The room itself was small and bare, consisting only of 2 glass-covered beds. In one lay Ichika with her hair let out and wearing a simple white gown with her Konoha Hite Tae folded and resting next to her. In the other lay the body of the Yondaime Hokage Namikaze Minato in all his battle-ready glory. However, what caught the most attention were the simple gold bands that rested on each of their ring fingers. Yosho, Airi, Funaho, Masaki, and Azusa were the first to step up as they surrounded Ichika's bed. After some time and a prayer, they moved over to Minato and repeated the prayer. Naruto had no idea how much time had passed, nor did he realize that he was shedding silent tears as he looked at the still forms of his parents, a sight that he had both looked forward to and dreaded throughout his life. While many of them saw it, all of them kept from speaking, while Sasami simply stepped over to his side and took his hand without saying a word. "Yosho. Oh, can you transport them to Kirito, please?" said Azusa after several minutes. "Of course, my lord," answered Yosho. "Oh," before the 2 beds glowed slightly before phasing out of existence. "Prince Naruto, you will find your inheritance from the Uzumaki clan within the next room," said Yosho. "Oh." Taking a breath, Naruto took a step towards the mentioned room, with Sasami walking in step with him, still holding his hand. As they entered the room, they found only a single bed upon which sat a large scroll, which the blonde quickly sealed within a storage scroll he carried. Beside the scroll was the sword he'd seen in his mother's section of the museum, only this was the real deal with several slight differences. The real sword's blade wasn't just black, but so black it seemed to absorb light. The handle was red and black instead of solid black, and it was 68 inches overall, about 3 inches longer than the replica. The sheath, however, was simple in that it was solid black with a simple black cord which he used to secure it to his back. Turning to Sasami, he found that she was holding a small bedside picture which she handed to him. In the picture were both of his parents sitting in front of the tree, with Minato having his back to it, while Ichika sat between his legs leaning against his chest as his arms were wrapped around her midsection while his chin rested on her left shoulder. After looking it over, the blonde sealed it within his storage scroll as well before they left the room. "Well, now this is interesting," commented Washu as she looked on a screen. "What's wrong?" questioned Airi. Naruto didn't speak, but he watched her from his position. He was currently leaned back in a reclining chair, much like one would expect to see in a dentist office. He was shirtless, allowing his solid torso and six-pack to be seen with wires attached to his torso. They were currently within the subspace that housed Washu's lab, about an hour after the short trip to Yosho O's tree. In the end, the AI had wished him well and explained that now that her purpose was fulfilled, she would going offline. Because of this, he had given the key to Airi, which she was now wearing. "There's nothing wrong, worrywart," said Washu with a laugh before turning to the blonde. "Naruto. Dono, according to these scans, you possess a second form of sorts," explained Washu, getting a raised eyebrow. "It appears that this is something you were born with, that you gained most likely due to the fact your mother was the container before you were. You won't change much, but you'll have claws and fangs. In this form, your senses will also be greatly enhanced, as well as your strength and speed. All in all, I'd say it's just a more battle-ready form. Other than that, you're a bit malnourished," informed the woman. "So I have a more animal-like form then?" mused the young genin. "I suppose you could say that," said Washu. "So are you ready for this?" questioned Washu. "Yes, let's get it over with." "So eager, maybe you can be my guinea pig," said Washu. "Only if you treat me right." At his answer, Washu paused in shock, as no one had ever answered her like that. Even Tenchi shied away whenever she brought up such a prospect. Granted, she only ever teased him, but still Naruto didn't know her that well and still wasn't fazed. Interesting indeed. Alright then, here we go, said Washu, returning to reality. With that, the genius flew over the keys at an astonishing rate. Finally, after much typing, she finished and pressed enter. Almost immediately he could hear a sound similar to a generator coming online and his seal flashed into existence. He didn't know how much time passed. All he knew was that he was taking deep breath after deep breath and gritting his teeth as well in pain. It felt like liquid fire was traveling through his chakra network, organs, bones, and skin. Finally, after who knows how long, the pain faded and numbness took effect. At the same time, he could hear the sound the generator made as it slowed down and eventually powered off. So what do you think? Questioned Washu as she approached. In her hand he could see a small red gem in her hand, very similar to the ones he saw her daughter Ryoko wearing. However, the difference was that this one was slightly bigger, and if one looked closely enough they could see energy swirling around inside of it. Looking down, he was just in time to see the last part of his seal flaking away before he passed out. He awoke once more in the sewer-like landscape that made up his mindscape. As he looked forward, he could see the slip of paper that had acted as the seal flowed to the ground. Almost as soon as it fell, it was enshrouded in smoke, and he found himself looking upon the form of his mother in her Kushina guise. In the next instant, he saw the battle-garbed form of his father fade into existence before he blinked. Okay, I never expected this, said Minato, scratching the top of his head. What's going on? Questioned Kushina. I had the Kyubi removed by Hakuba Washu. Apparently they plan to get rid of the rest of them the same way, explained Naruto. Really, wow, said Kushina. Your bodies are aboard Kirito and will be sent to Jirai for burial. Also, apparently I'm the grandson of the Nidaime Hokage, Sarutobi. Gigi announced it to the clan heads when my heritage was made known, said Naruto. Okay, that's also something I didn't expect. Naruto, you'll need to be especially careful now and train even harder, said Minato. Yeah, I kind of figured. Kakashi is teaching me taijutsu, Yosho. Gigi said he'll work with me on kenjutsu too. I've got clones working on nature manipulation for wind and water, and I'm going to have some start studying basic seals, said Naruto contemplatively. Before you start working with seals, you'll need to focus on calligraphy, as your writing needs to be absolutely perfect with seals, said Kushina. When you finish nature manipulation training, try adding wind to the Rasengan. It was never really completed, so that's your job. Don't even think about touching Hiraishin until you go through everything your mother left you on seals though, said Minato. I'm supposed to marry Sasami when I turn 16. Also, the Hyuga head and the Inuzuka heads have submitted marriage contracts, said Naruto, causing Kushina to groan. I knew I forgot something. Sochi, whatever you do, make sure it's a decision you can live with. Also, you should smile more, but real ones. I will not have you going down the road of the brooding emo, understand? Said Kushina, causing Naruto to take a step back and nod, seeing her hair arch up so that it looked like she had 9 tails. Well son, I'd like to stick around a lot longer, but I'm just about out of chakra. Know that I'm proud of you, and I look forward to listening to everything you have to tell the next time we meet a long time from now when you have grandchildren to tell us about, said Minato, giving his young mirror image a hug. His mother didn't say anything at first, simply pulling him into a tight hug and whispering words into his ear. When she pulled back, she had a smile on her face as she and his father faded away from the place. Naruto was still for several seconds, returning the smile before he too faded away, leaving his mindscape for the last time. The world's greatest scientific genius is Hakuba Washu. Even though the majority of people would disagree with such a title, everyone who lived in the universe where she did and was knowledgeable about it knew that this assertion was true. Although she was little known to most people in the galaxy, those who did knew her well understood that she favored spending as much time as possible in her lab. The greatest mind in the universe was currently doing just that, her fingers caressing the keyboard as her eyes fixed on the screen in front of her. She was currently reviewing all of the information she had been able to gather from the Kyubi and working to stabilize the crystal that had formed from its chakra. From what she could see, it had eventually started to experience the same negative emotion after picking up on human hatred over time. After adjusting to the planet, it had also acquired a number of abilities that, to be honest, were not anticipated when the original was designed. But as she had previously told the council, the Kyubi's dispersed power was gradually becoming unstable, as evidenced by its growing negative feelings. Additionally, she learned that all 9 of the beasts had developed telepathic connections with one another over time, which made sense to her since they were all originally a single entity. She had to admit that she was impressed by the wealth of information she had discovered, which belonged to the 2 previous hosts of the Kyubi, Uzumaki Mito and Uzumaki Kushina. She was a genius in every sense, but she was honestly confused by the Fuinjutsu formulas and knowledge, so she would need to put in a lot of time to learn it. Naturally, she also needed to reorganize the power matrix, which had become even more unstable as a result of the Yondaime Hokage's actions in dividing it up. Even though she could comprehend his motivations, particularly considering the circumstances, she still had to reassemble it. Because of this, she had forced Seto to swear that the bodies would be kept alive until she could come to get the half that was sealed inside Minato. In addition, she was working on a different project, which she considered to be less complicated. Her second assignment was to breed a line of male hellhounds to complement Naruto's current collection of 3 females. Sincerely, she was enthralled with the animals and thought she could witness the extinction of such a species. As far as she was concerned, it wasn't difficult because she had done similar tasks previously. She had to draw from her reserves of mass, of course. The little creatures proved to be quite useful, and she was grateful to have acquired them while attending the Royal Space Academy. The mass themselves were made of aggregates of simple matter, and by combining the DNA of the 3 hellhounds, albeit with a little genetic code twist, it was relatively easy to create male versions of the hounds. Even though she was working on many other projects, those were the most recent and, in her opinion, the most significant ones at the time. Even though she was working on several far more important projects, she was doing them as a favor to Naruto. The blonde boy had truly left an impression on her because, even though he was clearly in pain during Kyubi's extraction, he didn't cry out once. Furthermore, he had given her the freedom to conduct her tests as much as she wanted, something that even Tenchi, with all of his might, had hesitated to do. Washu discovered after all of her tests were completed that Naruto was simply amazing in what she had learned, but that was a topic for another day because she had work to do right now. Standing atop the water in a calm yet watchful stance, Naruto inhaled deeply several times. He was practicing several moves with a bakken that he was holding in his hands. Seated on the shore not far offshore, Yosho proudly observed his advancement. Tenchi took a considerable amount of time to learn the fundamentals of the Jirin sword style. Naturally, despite his strength, Tenchi lacked the warrior's instinct that Naruto possessed and utilized. However, Naruto did not possess Tenchi's natural ability to control power, something he was continuously striving for. Yosho was pleased to see an energy shield appear to block his small stone as he threw it towards his young grandson, having just had this thought. The royal sword style of Jirai was about being as free as the wind and flowing with the movements like water, without any fixed and stiff forms. Even though Naruto was starting to get the hang of the style, which balanced attack and defense, he was still far from being considered a true swordsman. Although it was a drastic departure from his previous fighting style, everyone found it to be a positive adjustment. For his part, Naruto was grateful for the practical instruction since it helped him advance his skills and allowed him to spend more time with his grandfather. He discovered that summoning energy shields was more difficult without Yosho's ki. But Yosho had told him that this was because, although he had previously drawn them from Yosho, he was now making them himself, which was actually much more difficult. In addition, he had learned that without the Kyubi, his reserves of chakra had stopped replenishing and that it was getting easier to control the enormous pool he possessed. Naturally, this came about after a great deal of effort to revive it. Upon first awakening, he discovered that his bodily control had been severely compromised. However, in exchange, he had gained enhanced strength, agility, speed, senses, healing, and durability. Even from his planet, Washu claimed that his bones were actually denser than those of a typical person. His hearing had improved to the point where he could hear a whisper at the edge of a room with concentration, his sight had sharpened to enable him to see farther than before, making him more sensitive, and his sense of smell was extraordinary, surpassing that of an Inuzuka. Naturally, all of this was found out later, after he had had enough time to heal from the removal procedure. But when he had first woken up, he had felt very vulnerable and had been relieved that no one had been able to exploit that. Finally, the effects of his training with Kakashi were starting to show. For once, his taijutsu was at least as good as it was supposed to be, according to Kakashi. Just the day before, he and Sasuke had engaged in a taijutsu. Only spar and he had prevailed. Sasuke insisted repeatedly that it was an accident, but Naruto was able to see through the clumsy explanation because of his own struggles as a child. Thanks to some rather abusive use of the Kage Bunshin no jutsu and intense chakra exercises developed by Uzushio that his mother had stashed away, his chakra control was gradually getting better. In addition, he had picked up some of the water techniques that Zabuza had taught him after Kakashi had returned his scroll, and he had also been fairly well compensated because many of the techniques were unknown to Konoha. He had previously mastered the C. Rank Suiten, Mizurappa, Water Release, Violent Water Wave, the D. Ranked Kirigakure no Jutsu, Hidden Mist Technique, and Zabuza's signature technique, the C. Ranked Mizu Bunshin no Jutsu, Water Clone Technique. He'd picked up a few skills from his father's scrolls as well. The first two were the C. Ranked Futons, Daitopa, Wind Release, Great Breakthrough, and Reposho, Wind Release, Violent Wind Palm. Additionally, he had started the last phase of learning the Rasengan, which was currently proving to be very challenging. He was encouraged to start calligraphy, something Heir was personally helping him with, as his writing was apparently atrocious, but he really wanted to start working on his Fuinjutsu. However, the Sandaime had persuaded him to wait until his godfather arrived, who could oversee the process in the interim. Aside from that, he was also learning a few other lessons, none of which were nearly as enjoyable. He had to relearn how to walk, talk, and act in order to fit in with his new social status. He was learning things like royal etiquette, which included politics, table manners, and social manners. Yosho was working with him on this. Fortunately, Tenchi and Seina were undergoing the same torturous training, so he didn't have to suffer in silence. Naruto felt that it would take a long time for him to become a gentleman because he was from the streets, but Seto thought that Yosho's training could make them into proper gentlemen befitting their stations. Naruto was uncomfortable with the whole situation and preferred his simple life, but they reasoned that he would need to learn these lessons if he were to become Hokage in the first place. "Alright, that's enough," called Yosho, forcing the blonde out of his mind. "I have given you ample time. Have you come to your decisions regarding the betrothal offers?" asked the individual. "Well, I want to speak with Hinata one more before making a decision on that. Regarding the Inuzuka, I don't think it's a good idea because of our connection and the fact that I don't really get along with her clan's Ninken." After a brief pause, Naruto said, "Naruto-kun." A voice that captured their attention called out. When the two turned to face it, they saw Sasami sprinting from the house towards them. They were presently in the Senju estate, which needed extensive cleanup following decades of abandonment. Sadly, the isolated home his father maintained was destroyed in the Kyubi attack and was never rebuilt. Nonetheless, the estate was actually fairly large, easily accommodating everyone who was presently residing there. The location was encircled by trees on all sides because it was concealed within a thick forest. Only 8 of the 13 bedrooms in the estate's main house which they were occupying were in use at the time. Though he really preferred his new apartment where his parents had lived, he had every right to claim it as the grandson of the Nidaime Hokage. "Are you done with training yet?" Sasami inquired upon her arrival. "Hi, we were just finishing actually," Yosho remarked as he started to leave the two on their own. "I have something for you," Sasami said, extending a tiny object. Naruto took it from her and examined it, discovering that it was, in fact, a ring. Given how frequently Jurians had used it, he wouldn't be surprised if it turned out to be made entirely of wood. He was taken aback to find that it fit his middle finger on his right hand perfectly. "Tenchi, Ayeka, and I all wear rings identical to that one, if you noticed. When that ring is engaged, a Jurian battlesuit will be placed over you." Sasami, seeing his curious expression, explained. While strolling, Sasami enthralled him with tales from the past 5 years, which began when she and her sister became stuck on Earth. He'd never really asked about Earth, even though she'd told him a lot about Jirai and what to expect there while he recovered. But it was interesting to hear the specifics of how the group had first met on Earth, especially the antics that Ryoko and Ayeka got into, which were very funny. Actually, with all the bickering they still did frequently, it reminded him a lot of the arguments from the Sasuke fan club back in his academy days. Naruto laughed as they both noticed a square rock sitting on the side of them, interrupting their story time. The blonde asked, "Konohamaru, you do know that rocks aren't perfect squares, right?" At his words, the rock burst, covering the ground in smoke, an effect that was marred by several people coughing. When the smoke cleared, the two saw the formidable Sarutobi Konohamaru laboring to expel the smoke from his lungs while on his hands and knees. He was accompanied by a small girl whose orange hair was pulled back into two enormous pigtails using red elastics. She also has red oval marks on her cheeks that give the impression that she is always flushed. She accessorized her look with traditional ninja sandals, gray pants, and a red tank top over a pink shirt layered at the bottom. Another boy with short brown hair and round glasses encircling his eyes accompanied her in Konohamaru. His beige pants were paired with a blue sweater that had long sleeves and was zipped up to create a turtleneck. A drop of snot was hanging from his nose. But what really attracted Naruto's attention was that each of the three children had a pair of green goggles on top of their heads that looked just like his old ones. "Udon, I think we used too much black powder?" wheezed Konohamaru, convincing the other boy to agree. In a moment, Naruto asked, "So Ko, do you plan on introducing your friends?" "Right." Konohamaru exclaimed, miraculously springing to his feet and fully recovered. The boy yelled, "I am the mighty Sarutobi Konohamaru, future Hokage." The girl with orange hair exclaimed, "I'm Moegi, the prettiest girl in school." With equal enthusiasm, "I'm Udon. I like math." The last boy spoke, not nearly as passionately. "We declare ourselves the Konohamaru Corps." The three chibis exclaimed together, striking what they believed to be a dramatic pose. Konohamaru broke into a smile and exclaimed, "Whoa cool boss, you got new goggles." It turned out that Naruto had a fresh set of goggles covering his eyes. In contrast to the heavy goggles he had worn as a student, Washu had custom made these black goggles with dark lenses that were actually rather sleek. In addition, he was dressed in black slacks and his orange swirled black shirt, the sleeves of which were cut off to reveal the developed arm muscles. He wore black sandals and had replaced the cloth on his tae to black. The metal bracers were dull and covered his forearms. The metal was polished and worn proudly on his forehead. The blonde asked, "So what's up? You promised you'd play ninja with us." Naruto recoiled at the cutesy pout from Moegi. "A ninja playing ninja, I've never heard of anything so stupid," said Sakura, who had just been rejected by Sasuke once more, as she came around the corner. "Have you finished the last task you were assigned?" raised an eyebrow in question from Naruto. "Yup, all of us can make a leaf stick to our heads for a full 10 minutes," said Konohamaru proudly, while Sakura's eyes went wide as she couldn't do that. "Nay, boss, is that your girlfriend?" questioned Moegi, pointing to Sasami. "Something like that. My name is Sasami." "It's nice meeting you," said the blue-haired girl with a smile. "Cool boss. She's much cuter and nicer than that gorilla you used to like. I mean, honestly, sometimes I wonder if she's even a girl," exclaimed Konohamaru. Before anything else could be said, however, Sakura's temper, much like a volcano, erupted, and with murder in her eyes the girl leapt. Not slow on the uptake at all, Konohamaru dodged to the side, letting her fly past him before taking off at a quick run with his two friends on his heels. Not one to be denied giving a beating, Sakura stopped on a dime, turned, and shot after the group once more. "Well, I'll go stop her from doing something stupid and meet up with you after my team meeting, okay?" said Naruto, getting a smile and nod from Sasami before he dashed off as well. Unlike the rest of them, Naruto took to the rooftops, and in no time at all he had caught up with the group. Unfortunately, it wasn't quick enough, as Konohamaru turned a corner and crashed into someone with such force that the guy staggered back while Konohamaru fell on his rear. Seeing this, Sakura skidded to a halt while the person Konohamaru ran into recovered and, ignoring the boy's apologies, picked him up by his scarf and proceeded to hoist him up into the air. The boy himself wore a black, baggy, full bodysuit with a red and yellow circle on the front. He also wears a black hood with cat-like ears and his Suna Hite tae on his forehead, the hood covering his hair completely. "Damn it, Kankuro, he's just a kid, just leave him and let's go," said his companion. His companion was a kunoichi, her dark green eyes dispassionate and bored and her blonde hair pulled back and gathered into 4 separate ponytails. She wore an outfit which consists of a single light purple colored, off the shoulders garment that extended to halfway down her thighs, with a scarlet sash tied around her waist. In addition to incorporating fishnet worn over her shoulders and legs, specifically on her right calf and her left thigh, she also wore her headband around her neck. Disgusting. Picking on someone who can't fight back. Came a voice catching everyone's attention. Turning towards it, they were all greeted to the sight of a girl with short, spiky mint green hair with an orange clip that remarkably matched her eye color. She wore an outfit that consisted of a short sleeveless white midriff shirt with fishnet armor underneath, long white armlets, and fishnet shorts with a short white apron skirt over it. She wore her hite tae wrapped around the upper portion of her left arm, the metal showing the marking of Takigakure. She had dark skin, though obvious from tan, and her eyes were harsh, holding an intense hatred and profound distaste for all around her. Perhaps you'd like to see what it feels like from the other side. At the voice, several eyes widened as Naruto appeared standing at the side of the one called Kankuro, the bladed edge of one of his yulaks tapping against the Suna. Nin's leg, dangerously close to the teen's most beloved part of his anatomy. Kankuro gulped, instantly understanding the non-verbalized threat and dropping Konohamaru, who scrambled back away from the two, allowing Naruto to put the blade down. As the blonde made his appearance, the reactions of all of them varied. While the chibis were all looking at the scene in awe, their eyes wide in wonder and admiration, Sakura had gone wide-eyed, her teammate's appearance and demeanor reminding her of a time that she'd seen on their journey back from the Land of Waves, where he had massacred a group of bandits that had the misfortune of crossing him. Fast, thought the blonde kunoichi from Suna, her eyes narrowed as she moved away from the wall. Who is this guy? Thought Kankuro, a nervous bead of sweat trickling down his face. This feeling, who is this guy? Thought the green-haired Taki kunoichi with her own eyes narrowed. You in the tree. Keep this fool on a leash, otherwise I'll have to show him what a real animal is like, said the blonde, turning his head to his left. Following Naruto's line of vision, the group were greeted with the sight of two other individuals. The first was Sasuke, who was also wide-eyed, slowly turning to face behind him, for behind him, standing upside down upon a tree limb, was another Suna shinobi. Like Naruto, this guy was a little on the short side, yet possessed an aura of power along with a glare that had the other two Suna nin trembling. He has pale skin and short, spiky hair that is brick red and has green eyes. He had no eyebrows, however what he did possess were dark rings surrounding his eyes and the kanji for love emblazoned on the left side of his forehead. He wore a black full bodysuit with shirt like sleeves, a 3/4 length legs, and an open neck. Along with this, he wore a white cloth over his right shoulder and the left side of his hips, and a wide leather band system over the left shoulder and right side of his hip. Attached to this leather band, he carried a large gourd on his back with his hite tae secured to the band. In an instant he vanished in a whirl of sand, only to reappear on the ground just in front of Naruto. Kankuro, you're an embarrassment to our village, said the newcomer, his voice showing his annoyance. Gee, Gaara, it's not my fault there, started Kankuro before he was interrupted. Shut up or I'll kill you, cut in Gaara emotionlessly. If you won't, I certainly will. The less trash polluting this world, the better as far as I'm concerned, cut in the green-haired Taki kunoichi, reminding all of her presence. From her position, Sakura was trembling. While the three of them weren't saying much, it reminded her of the time they'd first run into Zabuza, as the presence of the three of them were steadily increasing, as if they were sizing each other up. The three of them were like animals stalking each other to see who was going to be the first to become impatient before the others pounced. Within Naruto something stirred as the presence registered to him, and Gaara was the only one capable of seeing the small growth of his incisors as the tension slowly mounted between the three. Come, we're leaving, said Gaara, suddenly moving to turn his back to walk away. Wait, who are you two? Questioned Sasuke, pointing out the two he was speaking up. I am Sabaku no Gaara, said Gaara, turning back to face the group. I am called Fu, stated the green-haired girl as well. I am interested in your name as well, stated Gaara. I Ama. It doesn't matter who you are. I hold no interest in you, said Gaara, cutting the Uchiha off and staring at the blonde leaf nin. Naruto, said the blonde, evenly getting a nod before the trio of Suna nin left and the Taki nin disappeared. Elsewhere, Sarutobi Hiruzen sat within his chair with an impassive look upon his features as he eyed the various Junin who all stood before him professionally. At the moment he was only waiting for the stragglers to arrive before he could get the meeting started. While he waited, he reflected on the things that had been done within the last month since the arrival of the Masaki clan. First and foremost, he'd been forced to turn over the Senju clan properties and accounts to Naruto and had discovered that a substantial amount of the funds had been missing. He had managed to cover it by saying it had been used to fix damages suffered during the Kyubi attack and must not have been put back. In truth, he didn't know what happened but was having the matter looked into by some of the best and his most trusted. Yosho had joined the council as the Senju representative, as since he was Naruto's grandfather, even maternal, he had that right unless Tsunade returned to claim it. While they hadn't been able to contain all of the news concerning Naruto's new status, they had controlled it, merely allowing the fact that members of the Masaki clan had come looking for Naruto, who was himself a member by birth. For many, this news was an eye-opener. Naruto to many of the villagers had been the Kyubi reborn, simply for the fact that no one knew who his parents were, and as such many had speculated that the Yondaime had simply transformed the Kyubi into that form. Now that he'd had a family appear searching for him, it had forced many to actually stop and think about their actions concerning the blonde over the last decade. He had also been trying his hardest to make this integration as smooth as possible given the current situation. Many of the members of the council were still scrambling and trying to figure out a way for them to come out on top in order to gain prestige. However, all avenues were skillfully blocked by Yosho with an ease that was simply ridiculous. However, at the same time, many couldn't help but admit that what had already been put on the table was remarkable. Such thoughts, however, were for another time as he noticed the last of the stragglers come into the room. "Now that everyone has arrived, let us begin, shall we?" said the legendary professor, bringing the meeting to order. "I don't know how many of you remember, so I'll come right out and say it. The Chunin exams will be hosted once more within our village starting tomorrow morning. However, there are some changes that I feel you all need to know. First and foremost, nearly a month ago, a large group known as the Masaki clan came to the village in search of one of their own. While they couldn't find her, they did find her son, young Naruto, and have since taken up residence within the village," explained the Sandame, getting several wide eyes and causing many to break out in heated whispers. "Also, after much discussion, I have decided to call a leaders' summit which will take place next month, the day following the final matches. As such, all of the villages have received invites to participate within the exam this time around. Because of the importance of this meeting, we will now be going under wartime alert," continued the old man, shocking nearly everyone in attendance. "While I don't anticipate any problems at this moment, I don't want to leave anything to chance. For right now, only the minimum necessary will be going out on missions in a revolving manner. The rest of you will work on securing all borders and bolstering the defense of the village. Just so you understand the full seriousness and importance behind this meeting, both Jiraiya and Tsunade will be returning to the village in order to attend," explained Hiruzen. "Now with that said, let us begin the team nominations. We will begin with our newest additions, our shinobi forces." When Irie opened her grandson's door that morning, what greeted her was the sight of the blonde seated calmly and peacefully. Cloth, oil, files, and other tools all out as he went about cleaning and sharpening his weapons for the day's usage. Already she could see the shuriken and kunai that had been completed lying atop a sheet at his feet as he was now working on his now favorite weapons, being the ulax. She could also see spools of razor wire gathered together, and though she didn't know it, he had several stacks of explosive tags put away as well. While Fanaho didn't like it, Irie could not fault the boy, for she herself had a certain fondness for her own weapon, a gun she'd had since her academy graduation and cleaned regularly and religiously. "Is there something wrong?" questioned the woman as she sat just behind the blonde, yet not disturbing his work. "There's something in the air. Something familiar yet foreign at the same time. These exams will be interesting." As Naruto said this and looked at her, Irie was surprised to find that the pupils within his eyes had turned to slits, giving his eyes a more feral appearance. In the next instant, he had turned away, beginning the process of collecting his now dry weapons and securing them into their places in their holsters, which were quickly secured to his legs. She watched in fascination as he walked the length of the room, sealing away the spools of razor wire she had seen and several that had been cleverly hidden. Soon he began opening several hollow portions of the walls, removing the items that had been stashed away by the room's previous occupant. All too soon the two of them were walking the halls of the estate and into the kitchen, the blonde removing 3 large steaks and taking them outside, tossing one to each of the 3 hellhounds he'd been given. Leaving them to their own devices, the blonde made his way out of the compound, stopping briefly to see Tenchi and Yosho, who were renovating the shrine they'd found, with Ayeka and Ryoko having one of their seemingly weekly arguments not too far away, judging by the closeness of their voices. As Irie remained, Naruto left, leaving Tenchi to his troubles as the young teen continued on, leaving the compound for the village proper. As he walked through the village, he initiated a process he'd done for as long as he remembered, watching. Unknown to most, this was something Naruto had done for the longest and the biggest reason that his pranks were always successful. It was also the reason why no one could actually find him if he did not want them to. The center of the village as always was densely packed as everyone went about their day. As he had avoided the village streets, choosing to stick to the rooftops the last month with his new appearance clothing-wise and his slightly longer and better-kept hair, he may as well have been invisible. Using the early morning crowd itself for cover from the watchful eyes of the villagers, he watched everyone and mentally took note of everyone and everything he saw. All too soon he found himself standing before the doors to the academy with Sakura and Sasuke standing beside the doors. As he joined up with them, the three of them traded looks before turning and entering the threshold of the academy. Almost immediately they were hit with a barrage of sounds coming from up ahead, which they soon identified to be coming from a large group of genin that were trying to get by a pair of blocked-off doors. Naruto rolled his eyes, spotting the pair of chunin known as Izumo and Katetsu in what he considered as shoddy henges, judging this to be an unofficial part of the exams. Turning to his two teammates, he saw that they had apparently figured out the same thing, and just as Sasuke arrogantly strode forward, he grabbed him and Sakura, directing them back outside. Once outside, he ignored their protest and began walking up the wall. In action the two followed, though under protest in the Uchiha's case. Once they emerged from the window on the third floor, they were greeted to the sight of Kakashi standing lazily next to the doors they were supposed to be going to. Upon spotting them, the copy ninja snapped his ever-present orange book closed and slid it into his supply pouch, greeting them with one of his eye smiles. "Well, now not only did all of you show up, but you saw through the first test as well. Good job," said Kakashi, giving both Sasuke and Sakura a pause. "What was the purpose of the first test anyway?" questioned Sakura in a way that had hid her surface thoughts. "Well, the purpose was perception, or rather the ability to see underneath the underneath. While anyone with a decent level of perception should have been able to tell that was the first floor, you also needed to be able to see through the henge. While your abilities with the technique are decent, I'm betting Naruto saw through it, having taken it to the level that he has, and was able to see that the two that blocked the door were in all actuality chunin, while the two of you most likely noticed the genjutsu on the door," explained Kakashi. "What would have happened if all three of us hadn't shown up?" questioned Sasuke. "I'd have barred you from entering. These exams operate on a team basis, meaning you need an entire team to participate. However, I also didn't want anyone forcing the others to attend, and thus told all of you that you could choose whether or not you wished to attend, thus forcing you to evaluate your own skills and determine whether or not you felt you should attend. With that said, good luck from here on out." "Yane," said the Scarecrow before he vanished in a plume of smoke. Rolling his eyes and swearing to learn the Shunshin no Jutsu within the nearby future, Naruto pushed the doors open, allowing his team to walk through. Immediately they were the source of the room's attention, as all eyes focused on them, as well as a substantial amount of killing intent. Collectively dismissing the minor killing intent that in no way compared to the terrifying effects of Zabuza's own, the three genin moved to relocate from in front of the door. "Sasuke-kun." Before they could even move, a blonde blur had launched and attached itself to Sasuke, revealing it to be one Yamanaka Ino. As she registered her rival's presence, Sakura immediately went to contest it, causing Naruto to sigh and shake his head. With the announcement of "troublesome," he found himself turning and greeting the duo of Nara Shikamaru and Akamichi Choji, who were Ino's teammates. Before they could do more than greet each other, the loud cry of "Yahoo!" ripped through the air, and they found one Inuzuka Kiba bounding towards them with a feral grin on his face, followed by Hinata and Shino, who trailed a small distance behind the energetic dog Nin. "So we're all here, huh? Even you crawled out of your hiding place, Naruto," commented Kiba as soon as he'd closed the distance with a smirk. "Indeed, your presence has been missing from the village as of late," said Shino, causing a couple of them to blink at hearing him actually speaking. "So you must be the rookies everyone's been talking about," came a new voice, catching the attention of the entire group. "And you would know this how?" questioned Ino with a raised eyebrow. "Well, for one, most of you were overly loud, ignoring the atmosphere and calling attention to yourselves." As the newcomer said this, he motioned behind him, causing the group to follow the direction and be hit with a rather substantial amount of killing intent, which came from a group of AIM Nin. Narrowing his own eyes at the display, Naruto stepped forward and released a blast of his own killing intent, something he'd picked up on during his training. The effect was instant, as an entire section of the room seemed to freeze up and break out into a cold sweat, each of them shivering slightly before the blonde, seemingly satisfied, cut it off abruptly and turned back to the group. "I don't see the problem with that. Those guys are weaklings," said Naruto, completely ignoring the looks the other rookies aside from his team were sending him. "Anyway, you never introduced yourself," continued the blonde after a moment more. "Right, my name is Yakushi Kabuto. Before he could go any further, however, there was a massive blast of smoke which appeared at the front of the room, catching everyone's attention. When the smoke cleared, there were several new people standing in the front, all of them uniformed in gray pants and button-down shirt with Konoha Hite. Taze. At the head of the group was a large bear of a man who wore the same, only on top of that he wore a long black trench coat and had two rather prominent scars adorning his face. "Alright, you brats, my name is Morino Ibiki. I'm the proctor for this exam. For the second exam, Training Ground 44, also known as the Forest of Death, was where the group of genin had assembled in front of a sizable fenced-off forest. A significant number of teams had failed the first exam, which was a written test. In contrast to a standard written exam, the goal of Ibiki's was to cheat while avoiding detection. Naruto, in contrast to certain individuals present, lacked devious techniques and thus devoted a significant portion of his time to staring directly at the proctor. As it happened, he had only addressed a handful of the questions before placing his bet on the 10th, which was an all or nothing proposition on which he had clearly been correct. Although Mitarashi Anko, the new proctor, was not as frightening as Ibiki had been, he was nonetheless, in many respects, just as frightening. From a distance and at first look, you probably wouldn't get that vibe from her. Standing at 5 feet 4 inches, she had violet-tinged black hair that was pulled back into a short, fanned-out ponytail. Her outfit included a dark orange skirt worn over a mesh bodysuit, a tan overcoat, shin guards, and a head leaf hide tae strapped to her forehead. Her demeanor was rather laid back and playful, so it was impossible to be intimidated by her. Naruto, on the other hand, wasn't fooled, having projected a similar demeanor for years, so he could see the anger concealed in her eyes. When she arrived, several chunin were already stationed, standing at attention with their hands clasped behind their backs and their feet spread shoulder-width apart. From the outside of the forest, it didn't seem like much until a loud roar echoed across the area they occupied before being abruptly silenced within the next moment. The large forested area seemed to be blocked off entrance, and she led them to it. "Alright maggots, welcome to the stage of the second test, Training Area 44, also known as the Forest of Death." The woman replied. "Hey, Forest of Death, yeah right, as if the hippie tree huggers could actually have such a place." And Iwa Nin had spoken the words, snorting mockingly, but in the next instant, a kunai had sailed past his face, cutting a noticeable gash along his right cheek, and Anko had materialized behind him, holding the weapon to the frozen genin's neck. "You know, the ones like you are usually the first to die, spilling that deliciously red blood I like so much." Before long, she found herself facing Akusa Nin that had pursued her. Although he would have dismissed the situation altogether, the Kusa Nin's glance toward his group had alarmed him. Upon meeting his gaze, he experienced a recurrent sensation that made him feel as though he was back on the path to Nami no Kuni. "Are you alright, Naruto? Kun?" asked a voice that startled him out of his reverie. As he turned to face the voice, he saw Hinata staring at him anxiously. He took a breath, noticed his hands trembling, and quickly balled them into fists several times before giving her a small smile in return, to which she replied with a relieved smile of her own. After a moment, the blonde said, "Hinata, I want you to avoid the Suna team with the redhead and the team that Kusa Nin is on." "Alright, pay attention," called Anko, grabbing the interest of both them and other people. "This forest serves as the exam stage, as I've already mentioned. You have 120 hours to complete the task before this stage ends. Your goal is to get to the tower that is situated in the center of it while carrying these two scrolls, one labeled Heaven, and the other Earth. Before entering, each team will be given one of the aforementioned scrolls to carry, and you will all enter the forest through separate gates. However, before that, you must all sign this document, which releases Hidden Leaf Village from all liability in the event that one of you perishes in the forest." Shikamaru moaned, 5 days, troublesome. It was certainly troublesome. To begin with, they were throwing a group of people who aspired to become professional killers into a vast forest where deaths were expected. They were forcing them to fight for 2 scrolls, which meant that half the teams present would be eliminated without a doubt. They would also have to deal with the creatures that called the place home. They were expected to enter with only what they had on hand. And finally, given the time limit, people would start to get desperate toward the end. While the genin of the various villages were literally signing their lives away, the Sandaime Hokage Sarutobi Hiruzen was occupied with Yosho, Irie, and Minaho, all 4 of them holding a cup of tea. For almost an hour they had been speaking of the couple that had bonded together and as it happened brought Clan Masaki down to the small planet that held Hai no Kuni. In Airi's hands she held the photo album from the Yondaime and her daughter's wedding at the Fire Temple, with Hiruzen, Jiraiya, and Tsunade acting as witnesses along with the Fire Daimyo. Hitaki Kakashi was also present as the lone remaining Yondaime student, as had the 3 students that Kushina had taken in the Yonda. Yosho, on the other hand, had the Hyuga clan's betrothal contract in his hands and was carefully reading through it. Hinata was the only one that Naruto had accepted, but as of yet there was no signature. This was fortunate for him because, as he read more, he discovered that the person who had written it had attempted to include a number of clauses that would guarantee the Hyuga would receive the better end of the bargain. Rolling the piece of parchment up, the eldest prince of Jirai shook his head in disappointment. This was just one of the reasons he hated politics. Yosho uttered the words, "Tell me why it was so imperative that Naruto's heritage be hidden, even on his mother's side." This made the Sandaime appear to age even more quickly. As you are aware, Minato made a lot of enemies outside of the village during his time as a shinobi, particularly during the Third Shinobi War. But most people are unaware that he also had a number of adversaries within the village, Hiruzen said, his eyes no longer alert but rather weary. Minato started reorganizing the village as soon as I gave him my title as Hokage. There are rumors that some council members were being urged to resign from their posts. He was going to reorganize how the academies and the roster's shinobi were trained. He had even scheduled a meeting with the daimyo to discuss the removal of the cursed seal of the Hyuga clan and its prohibition. Regarding Kushina, she had garnered a considerable number of adversaries. She was the Uzumaki clan's heir apparent and had inherited the title of daimyo, though she never used it. Beyond that, Uzu no Kuni is incredibly mineral rich, and many have been vying for those minerals. On the other hand, she was equally as dangerous as Minato on the battlefield thanks to her skills in Kenjutsu, water-style ninjutsu, and the Uzumaki clan Fuinjutsu. The Sandaime Reikage attempted to abduct her when she was younger, and if Minato hadn't noticed the hints she had been leaving behind that everyone else had missed, they would have almost succeeded. The man's son, who is currently the Reikage, was sent with the team to capture her, and I killed him in retaliation. The Sandaime paused here, as if oblivious to the woman's family's reaction, and proceeded to load and light his pipe. Taking a long draw, he held the smoke in before releasing it slowly, his body relaxing on the exhale. He fiddled in his drawer and took out a picture, which he gave to Airi. Examining the picture, she saw that it featured 3 women, her daughter, looking like Kushina, looking around her early 20s. Beside her, on the right, was the woman she recognized as the memory they'd watched, though she was younger. And lastly, on her left, was another woman with long, dark blue hair, fair skin, and bangs framing her face. Her eyes were. Hyuga Hinari and Uchiha Mikoto were her closest friends. With Hinari and Mikoto at the helm as matriarchs, the Hyuga and Uchiha clans, who had a fierce rivalry and contempt for one another, started to move toward peace after Kushina was able to unite them. As if that weren't enough, the 3 of them were heavily involved in village affairs and had earned the enmity of the Merchants Guild in addition to a number of other influential figures. A number of those individuals had been smuggling drugs into the village, and they were deeply offended, particularly after the woman who had trained them passed away from an overdose. They revealed a number of important chain links, but before they could reach Kushina, the Kyubi struck, killing her. As Naruto's godfather, Jiraiya was present right away and is a big part of the reason the council was unable to kill him before I was able to reclaim the title of Hokage. I lived there for 3 years until all of a sudden there was a rumor in Iwa that the Yondaime Hokage had an heir who was residing in Konoha. Soon after, rumors of an Uzumaki heir began to circulate, so I decided there had to be a leak. I informed the council that he was just a regular orphan and that I had given him the Uzumaki name in remembrance of Kushina, who was quite involved with the orphanage. Within a week, the rumors ceased, but not before Jiraiya had eliminated 2 teams of Kumo shinobi and 3 teams of Iwa shinobi. I thought Jiraiya would return right away, but he instead sent word that he had heard rumors about the whereabouts of his former teammate, who had left the village a year earlier after it was discovered that he was a sociopath. The man had joined a group of shinobi on the run, all of them stronger than a Kage or even a High Junin. Feeling rattled, he naturally started building his own espionage network and learned that the group was pursuing the Biju for an unidentified reason, which implied that they would eventually target Naruto. We've been trying for the past few years, but we've found surprisingly little information about them, the Sandaime concluded. At the moment, though, Naruto was frowning because he had thought that the higher vantage point would allow him to get a better look at his surroundings, but the canopy of the forest made that impossible. While the trees seemed more spread out on the ground, the higher up you went the more compact the place seemed to become. Just 15 minutes in, a horrified scream had echoed across the forest before being abruptly cut off. After turning in the forms, each team was presented with a scroll, though hidden from view by a tent from the other teams. His team had been presented with a heaven scroll, which he had pocketed much to Sasuke's disgust. That really didn't bother him all that much because after he and his team had split up, he had summoned his hellhounds, and when they had decided that they would have to separate for a while, he hadn't hesitated to leap away, knowing that one of them would have to stay with Sakura. Don't get him wrong, Sakura was growing on him, and had been since they had left Wave. She wasn't much, but she was trying, and that was enough for him to give her a chance, especially since she wasn't kissing his behind because she had learned about his ancestral heritage. As time went on, Sasuke's dislike for Sakura grew, so his decision to leave her with him was more of a petty act of retaliation. His thoughts were interrupted when he saw a flash of red appear in his vision, followed by a deep growl, and he looked up to see a large bear that had drawn the attention of the hounds. Shaking his head, he motioned for the three to go, and they quickly began chasing down the bear, with one of them leaping atop its back and forcing it to the ground. The three girls wasted no time in attacking the bear, causing it to howl with pain and rage. Eventually, one of them was able to snag down the beast's neck, twisting viciously, forcing the bear's cry to stop instantly. Her hair was red, and she was dressed in black pants and a beige shirt, which revealed the top of a mesh shirt to him. She had on a kusa hite tae and a pair of glasses that did nothing to hide her red eyes. Little did the blonde know that while she had been taking deep breaths to calm her racing heart, she was now using all of her willpower to stay grounded. The sheer amount of chakra she could feel waiting to be released was astounding, and the emotions that accompanied it were almost making her swoon. "Hey, are you okay?" asked the blonde. Fine," was the girl's response, and Naruto ignored her stutter. "Your group?" asked Naruto, but all he could say in response was silence. "I'll give you an escort to the gates, the proctors should let you out once you explain the situation." After saying that, she felt a tremendous amount of chakra strike her so suddenly and so closely that her knees began to weaken, though she was able to steady herself rather quickly. Just as he was about to summon 3 shadow clones, her breath was taken away. With a short whistle, the blonde called out, "Kamiko." After the dead bear was mauled, one of the hound's heads perked up, and she trotted over to him. He then cleaned off her muzzle with a rag he took out of his pocket. The girl looked at the hound, wondering where the blonde had found it or if it was some kind of never seen summon, since she had never seen creatures like those before. With his back to her, she failed to notice that he had lifted up his goggles to look the hound in the eyes. The hound tilted its head to the side as Naruto patted it on the side. "Be a good girl and take her to the gates, okay?" The redhead tensed as the hound approached, only for it to lie down in an obvious invitation. She slowly climbed so that she straddled the creature's back, turning just in time to see the blonde turn to leap off. Throughout his entire speech, he kept his eyes fixed on the hound, but it was clear that the hound understood him because it licked him along the cheek before bounding over to her. "Who are you, wait?" asked the young woman. With that, he bounded off, leaving a blushing girl behind her unless the hound suddenly leapt to its feet and took off, in which case she had to hang on for dear life. The name's Naruto. While this unknownly life-altering meeting was taking place, Hinata moved at a brisk pace through the forest, her Byakugan eyes blazing. She had surprised her team by immediately taking charge as soon as they had entered the gates. Byakugan eyes active, she had led them to a team of fellow Leaf Nin whom they had managed to lead into a trap and negotiate the needed scroll out of. At this point she was now leading them directly to the tower, going far around the Suna Nin. Naruto had warned her of dodging any group of Kumo Nin that even entered her range of vision, as it was the only thing keeping Kiba from complaining about the pace, and the fact that they were heading directly to the tower was the pace that they were setting. Despite their time as a team until that point, it wasn't until now that they realized that if they weren't carefully watching her, Hinata could disappear in an instant. This fact was even further enforced by her small stature and the fact that she tended to not try to bring attention to herself, as shown by the way she dressed and usually carried herself. Already he had lost track of her completely at least twice, and if not for Shino would have been left wondering where she had disappeared to. In an instant Hinata had leapt down a level, and the two males were quick to copy the action, going wide-eyed at the huge snake that literally flew through the spots they'd have occupied. On the lower level, Hinata was given the chance to show a whole new range of movement to her teammates as she dodged around branches and tree trunks before leaping upwards once more, the two males following, just barely avoiding the startled leaf nin that they came across. However, never once to take opportunities for granted, Kiba and Shino reacted quickly, grabbing a rather thick branch and using it to combine their momentum into a turnaround, nailing two of them in the face with a pair of swing kicks that sent them flying from the branches and slamming into a tree trunk, each leaving consciousness at one point or another. Hinata likewise had quickly reacted and doubled back, nailing the other in the back with a quick series of Jayuken strikes along the spine that quickly rendered them paralyzed, if only temporary. Hey, score! At the call, both Shino and Hinata turned to see Kiba rifling through their downed praise supplies and holding up a scroll, which he quickly tossed to Shino, who pocketed it. Grabbing a spool of ninja wire from the downed nin's supplies, the members of Team 8 quickly went about tying them to the tree trunks before taking off once more, only now with an extra scroll. Upon reaching regular seeing distance of the tower, the trio leapt from the trees and hauled ass due to the fact that there was no cover surrounding the tower, so to make it inside was a dead sprint. It would be because of this that the tale would spread how Team 8 shattered the record for completion of the second exam by completing it within 45 minutes. Within the confines of her lab, Washu held up the gem that held the power and consciousness of the Kyubi, finally stabilized. It had taken her some time to stabilize the gem, as she had needed the other half of the Kyubi's power to do so, which required drawing out what Minato had sealed within his own body. Finally, however, the process was completed and the now finished gem dwarfed Ryoko's, appearing about the size of a snow globe. She had learned much from it, especially in the possibilities that existed with Fuinjutsu. To think that on what was perhaps the most underdeveloped planet in the galaxy they had figured out a way to manipulate dimensions was incredible. Of course, they weren't up to her level in the ability with it, but the fact that they could create small pocket dimensions put them ahead of even Jirai and the researchers of the Galaxy Academy in the field of study. Sitting the gem down, she connected with the interface of her computer and watched as it flew through the information available at a quick pace. "So what do you think?" questioned the diminutive genius. The response was the gem actually glowing brightly for a moment before dying down. "Yes, I thought you would like it. It's still only half done, but it's coming along nicely," said Washu. As she said this, her hands began flying over the keyboard as she navigated her way through the system, all the while the gem pulsing with red light. "Oh Tsunami, your little tree ships aren't going to be nothing compared to these," muttered Washu with a smirk. If anything, the sphere glowed even brighter at her words. After all, there was nothing like sibling rivalries. Elsewhere in the village, Sasami suddenly sneezed, just barely managing to turn away from the food in front of her. Beside her, Ayeka paused in her own eating, only to be waved off by her younger sister. At the moment, they were at Ichiraku's, a place Sasami had been frequenting quite often lately. Out of all of the members of the Masaki clan, Sasami spent the most time in the village proper, as she was often spending time with Naruto. The first time she had come with Naruto and he had introduced her to Ayame and her father Tuchi, they had hit it off great, and she quickly realized the true reason for why Naruto wanted to spend so much time at the stand. When she had first been revealed to be one of Naruto's relatives to them, which Naruto had done with no hesitation, they had welcomed her with open arms. She and Ayame had become fast friends, and once revealed that she did the cooking for her household, began swapping recipes almost eagerly. She was happy she had decided to bring her own sister along this time, as the mood of the place had even broken through Ayeka's training and forced her into laughter at some of the stories Ayame shared about Naruto. However, Ayame proved to be a well of information on all things Naruto, and not just his time as Konoha's prankster prince. But she knew a side of the blonde that even the Sandame hardly knew of. When she had finally revealed to Ayame that she and Naruto were to marry, Ayame had told her point blank that Naruto's heart was fragile and she would have to be very careful with him. "So what's your home like?" questioned Ayame as she leaned on the counter, this being a slow point of the day. Jirai is a lot like Konoha actually, in that it is surrounded by forests, though of course there are differences. The people are of course very proud and our military is second to none," stated Ayeka, slowly trying to keep some things out of the conversation. "The last few years, however, we've been living away from Jirai, I suppose in what you would call our clan's second home. Things are a lot simpler there, as there is far less violence or pressure for much. You don't get out of school legally until age 18 there, and even then there is a lot of pressure to continue even further in order to get a decent job," finished the girl. "Naruto Kun would hate that. He always says he became a ninja to get out of school," said Ayame with a laugh. Back with the subject of their conversation, Naruto frowned as he listened to Sakura inform him of what had happened with she and Sasuke while he had been on his own. Sasuke himself was incapable of speaking as he'd been ridden unconscious by some freaky grass nin. According to Sakura, they had been attacked not even 5 minutes after he had left them. The attack had come out of nowhere as they were struck by a strong blast of wind that worked in separating them. When they recovered and met back up, the grass nin immediately attacked, focusing exclusively on Sasuke and taunting him the entire time while he was at it. Finally, Sasuke had revealed his Sharingan, and just when it looked he would come out fine, the grass nin struck fast and strong, pinning him to a tree and proceeded to bite him on the neck, where he screamed until he passed out. Looking at his neck, he could almost immediately tell that it was a seal of some sort. While he'd been doing much reading up on Fuinjutsu, he wasn't up to the point where he could recognize what a seal was just by looking at it. Tucking him into the burrow of a tree, he turned to face Sakura, who was staring down at the boy. "Well, camp out here as long as we can. As we are now going through the forest, would be a bad idea with him down. If push comes to shove though, I'll summon the girls again and we'll haul ass to the tower," said Naruto. "We can't go to the tower without both scrolls," reminded Sakura, busying herself by placing a rag on the Uchiha's head. "You just worry about the teme, I'll worry about the scroll," said Naruto, getting a nod from the pink-haired Kunoichi. With that discussion over with, Naruto sat himself down near the back of the tree. He would allow the day to go by and then strike at night when everyone else was trying to settle in. That was good for him as it allowed him time to go over his bag of tricks. His taijutsu and his blades would probably work to his best advantage, especially when used in conjunction with the Kirigakure no Jutsu. With the boost in his senses, he would most likely be able to tell where any and all opponents would be within the mist, and since he couldn't use it quite like Zabuza at this point, if he added his Kage Bunshin into the equation, it would make things a lot harder on his opposition. Of course, he always had the other technique from the Forbidden Scroll he'd learned that he had been keeping in reserve. The problem with it was that it still wasted a buttload of energy, and as such, with his control, he'd only be able to use it maybe 3 times before he was spent for the day, and with his reserves that said a lot. He also had another move that he was in the process of developing. In truth, it had been inspired by the move he picked up from the scroll, but it was coming along slowly. Due to his poor control, he didn't want to risk doing it himself, and as such had his shadow clones doing it in his spare time. Unfortunately, that wasn't what it used to be, and without the Kyubi to refill his reserves like he used to, he didn't use as many shadow clones as he once did. That, however, was something he now had to live with, and as such it had forced him to learn to fight smarter, not just harder. He had rededicated himself to his stealth training, which had helped him plenty during his time pranking, as had his trap-making skills. Even more without Yosho O's ki, it took him too much concentration to form energy shields at this point in time. So going in like he originally would have was a no-go. Everything would have to be done sneakily as opposed to an all-out assault. For the next few days they could stay in the burrow of the tree while Sasuke recovered, with Naruto being the only one to venture out unless Sakura felt the urge to go handle her personal matters. Finally, darkness arrived and Naruto could wait no longer, and that night headed out of the burrow of the tree. Moving swiftly up the truck, he reached one of the mid-level branches and stood stock still for but a moment. Lowering his goggles so that they dangled around his neck, his now glowing silver eyes took in all that surrounded him. From her position within the forest, Fu sat at the very top of a tree, her orange eyes staring up at the stars. Her so-called teammates were down on the ground away from her, which she had no problem with. In truth, she hated her teammates, not only that she hated the village and its inhabitants, and the only reason she was a kunoichi was because it let her leave. She had been hated by everyone for as long as she remembered, simply because the village leader decided to use her to seal one of the biju into, this one being the Nanabi no Kabutomushi. Because of this, she was considered an outcast by the villagers, especially due to the fact that she was an orphan, just unlucky enough for the village leader to have picked her out of a bunch at random. She didn't care, though she had determined that humans were trash. They spoke one thing, but their actions told of an entirely different story. They were barbarians in every sense of the word. Her escape from reality was the stars. They fascinated her for as long as she could remember. Was there life out there? Was there a more evolved civilized culture, or was it just as barbaric as that of the humans? Her dream was to one day grow powerful enough so that she could fly out and investigate the stars for herself, and even if she found nothing, she would never return to this world. Shomei, her biju, had told her that it could be possible that once she gained full control of her power, she could perhaps make the trip. Shomei had never tried, having no need to. After all, Shomei was a top-tier biju. There weren't many things more powerful, and before he was sealed away, had never considered itself threatened in any conceivable way by humans. At the moment none of these things were truly on her mind, instead it was the two boys she had met before the exam. Unlike other girls, she really didn't think about boys in a manner of sexual attraction. As far as she was concerned, the only reason for such a thing was in the interest of procreation, which she held no interest in at all. No, her interest in them came from the feelings they had invoked in her, a sense of familiarity. Chome had told her it was because they were like her. The redhead Gaara was practically flooding with Shukaku's power, while the blonde Naruto held only a faint feeling of Kyubi's power, suggesting he didn't much use it, unlike Gaara. She could understand that, as she herself didn't have much control of Chome's power, though she freely used the abilities it had granted her as a host. She had never put much thought in the others. She knew of course that Kumo, Iwa, Suna, and Kiri had all held Biju, but there was never any indication of the Kyubi ever being sealed. She wondered, were their lives like her own, or were they treated better than she was? Did they have better control of the Biju chakra than she did, or were they in the same boat as far as control was concerned? In all honesty, she was tempted to just run off and search them out, but was forcing herself to wait. They would all meet up soon enough and her questions would be answered. Even more, she would finally have worthy opponents to test her skills against. Yes, they would do battle and it would be glorious. Elsewhere, Niju sat with a contemplative frown on her face. She had been awoken from a rather vivid dream with her forehead drenched in sweat. As the former high priestess of Melma's, she was a very high-level telepath. Her dreams more often than not were actually visions of probable futures to come, and she was very good at manipulating those probabilities so that the one in her favor won out in the end. Despite the fact that she looked no more than 11 years old, she was over 2,000 and as such had lived long enough to get very good at it. That was what had led to her current life as a galaxy detective and one of Seina's wives. "Penny for your thoughts, dear," came a voice startling her. Looking up, she was greeted to the sight of Lady Seto, the only one of Jiraiya's council members to have stayed on Furia. She understood the motive well. While Yosho was good, he had learned from Seto and she had not taught him all of her tricks. When it came to politics, the Devil Princess of Jiraiya, as she was called, had no equal. She took a moment to reflect on whether or not she wished to share what she saw with the other woman. At this moment she was in a position to one day become a queen of Jiraiya and rule over all of the empire. However, she had already been leader of her own planet and realized the type of work that would entail. More than that, she rather quickly remembered the purpose for their coming to the planet in the first place, and thus a decision was made. "I had a vision," stated Niju quietly, causing Seto to raise an eyebrow. "For someone of my level, visions are not unheard of, though they are rare. They represent probable, most likely futures to come," explained Niju. "And what is it you saw?" questioned Seto. "Naruto's death." While this meeting was taking place, another was happening, this time involving the Sandame, Kakashi and Jiraiya. The white-haired man had arrived in the village no more than an hour previous to the current time, and for the first bit he and his sensei had played catch up while they waited for Kakashi to arrive. Now that he had arrived, the atmosphere was completely different, as the three men were all business at this point in time, as they caught Jiraiya up with everything that had happened with Naruto that the Sandame hadn't felt comfortable writing down. "So we were right in our hypothesis of what caused the Kyubi's release," said Jiraiya after learning of how the fox was released. "Indeed, and the usage of space-time ninjutsu makes the situation more troublesome," said Hiruzen, releasing a cloud of smoke from his mouth. "How did he take it?" questioned Jiraiya. "The same way his mother did when she found out about the attack on Uzushio," answered the old man, causing the Sannin to wince. "He's started reading up on Fuinjutsu, but he's left the actual application alone. From what I'm told, his handwriting is apparently atrocious, so they're working with him to fix it," stated Kakashi, joining the conversation. "So what all can he do?" questioned Jiraiya. "I've gotten him decent with Sensei's taijutsu style, which is mostly what we work on, though he's incorporated a pair of saber claws into the style," stated Kakashi, causing the man to whistle. "Those would be brutally effective," stated Jiraiya. "I've also tested him for his elemental affinity. He has both wind and water, so strong the paper actually shredded itself into 4 pieces before each piece became soaked in water. So far he's learned 3 water techniques which were part of a scroll Zabuza gave him, and 2 wind techniques, all offensive in nature. Along with that, he can use the Kage Bunshin technique and create chakra shields to protect himself," explained Kakashi. "Sounds like quite the skill set," said Jiraiya, his mind already flying to figure out a way to work with that. "So what is Kushina's family like?" questioned the Sannin. "The Masaki clan is larger than expected from the time she was among them. There are actually more females than males, it seems, mostly through marriage. For the most part they are all pretty much normal people who actually pass as civilians for the most part. The only one who doesn't really pull it off is the Emperor's eldest daughter Aika, but she spends the majority of her time within the Senju compound. Explained Hiruzen. Man, I'd have paid to see the council's reaction to him being of the Senju clan. Said Jiraiya with a laugh. It was interesting, one minute they were giving him the evil eye and all of a sudden they were demanding that he stays in Konoha, even going so far as to call him a valuable member of our village. Stated Kakashi, causing Jiraiya to snort. Naruto didn't buy it for an instant. Said Hiruzen, shaking his head. The conversation was suddenly stopped as a series of knocks echoed on the door before Seto made her way in, followed by Niju. Raising an eyebrow at their entrance and resisting the urge to call the woman out on the action, all three men felt their heartbeats skip at her words. We have a problem. It was morning when they made their way into the clearing that housed Team 7 for the past days. From her position within the burrow, Sakura looked them over. In the center was someone who had bandages covering most of his face, leaving only his left eye uncovered. He also wore a large poncho with long sleeves, a snake-patterned scarf around his neck, a bundle of straw protruding from the back of his scarf, and a large metal thing on his right arm and hite. Tae on his forehead. To his left was a girl with very long black hair, almost reaching down to the ground, tied by a violet ribbon right near the end, and black eyes. She wore a pale green vest somehow similar to a flak jacket, and snake-patterned pants and scarf, and hite. Tae on the forehead. Finally, to the right was another boy with spiky, dark hair and dark eyes. He wore a beige shirt with 2 black stripes and 3 prints of the kanji for death down the front. Like his teammates, he also wore the snake-patterned scarf around his neck. While he also wore his village symbol on his forehead, he didn't wear just a simple cloth like the others but also wore a hapori beneath the cloth. However, the thing that caught her attention the most was the village symbol, as it was one she had never seen before, that of a musical note. She remained perfectly still, continuing to feign sleep even as they approached. Suddenly, without warning, a barrage of shuriken were launched down at them from the treetops. The one on the right simply raised his hand upwards and the shuriken were sent sailing back in the direction they had come from. Suddenly a large log came flying at them, only for the one in the center to step forward and swing a punch, causing the log to actually shatter. In the next instant, the kunoichi motioned them to stop and pulsed her chakra, dispelling the genjutsu that had put up around them before Sakura was even able to make proper use of it, and revealing her perched up in a low branch of the tree. Nice try, little girl, but you'll have to do much better than that. Said the one on the left. What do you want? Questioned Sakura with narrowed eyes. Uchiha Sasuke, wake him up. Stated the one in the middle. Why? Questioned the girl. So we can kill him. Said the girl with a smirk. I have a better idea. Came a new voice, surprising them and causing them to look up and see Naruto standing behind them at the edge of the clearing, his goggles up and covering his eyes. Leave now and you can leave here alive. Said the blonde. Huh. As if something like that will happen. We're not here for some stupid exam, our only purpose here is the Uchiha's death. Said the boy on the right. Then you leave me no choice. Said the blonde. Suddenly Sakura's eyes widened as mist began to make its way into the clearing from all sides. Very quickly all of them found themselves unable to see anything aside from themselves. Even those right next to them were only just barely visible. You have 8 choices. The larynx, spine, lungs, liver, jugular vein, brain, kidney, and heart. Now tell me, which vital organ do you want to get struck at? Hey, yeah right, I'll blow this shit right out of here. Exclaimed the one on the left. No you won't. Whispered a voice in his ear, causing his eye to widen. Faster than he could react, metal pierced flesh, and no movement was made to muffle his cry of shock and pain before it was abruptly cut off. Shit, Zaku. The exclamations of his teammates were all they were able to get out before they were suddenly launched away from each other with the feeling as if they'd got struck by a sledgehammer. Both managed to recover quickly enough to land on their feet, but the attack had been more than enough to separate and isolate them from one another. Suddenly the male spun around and threw out a right punch, hearing a sound coming from behind him, and was satisfied to see the body crumple to the ground. You think some mist is really going to help you? I'm from Auto Fool, all I need to is sound. Said the boy snidely. So that's the name of your village, good to know. With that the blonde before him burst into smoke, much to his shock. Before he could recover from his shock, a form pounced on top of him, slamming him into the ground. Meanwhile, the lone kunoichi was circling her position with 3 senbon needles held in each hand between the cracks of her balled fists. For several long minutes Naruto just watched as she turned every which way trying to anticipate an attack. He knew from experience that the longer you made someone wait, the jumpier they became when using this technique. Just to add a little something extra for the situation, he allowed the mist to begin dissipating, and after but a few moments she went wide-eyed at the crumpled forms of her teammates. Suddenly she was launched forward and he quickly dropped to the ground as she went flying right over his head before hitting the ground and rolling about 3 feet before coming to a stop. Sure enough, as he looked up he could see Sakura standing where the Ado kunoichi had once been, head down and fist still clenched and extended in the spot her head had once been. Naruto shivered just slightly as phantom pain throbbed on the back of his head, but quickly shook it off and stood to his feet. Already the mist was nearly completely gone and he quickly pulled the chakra from his eyes, allowing their regular blue hue to make its return before standing back to his feet. As he settled his goggles back over his eyes, he paused as the memories of a dispelled clone came to him. Apparently the clone had the same idea he'd had and had lessened the density of the mist after seeing Sakura walking in from its position, and she had quickly managed to zero in on the Ado kunoichi. Still, her training must have been going better than he thought if she had managed to channel that monstrous strength of hers consciously like she just did. "What the hell was that?" exclaimed a familiar voice before either member of Team 7 could say a word. Turning, both saw Ino come storming out of the bushes. Behind her came Choji and Shikamaru, both shaking their heads at the antics of their teammate as she and Sakura quickly got into one of their standoffs, with the 3 boys all tuning them out with practiced ease. The revelry was cut short, however, as all of them felt a chakra surge shoot up out of nowhere. Even Naruto, who had trouble sensing the chakra of others through his own, took notice of it. Turning towards it, they were all shocked with the sight of Sasuke standing hunched over and surrounded by a deep purple chakra that looked akin to a fire, with 2 rings circling him, similar to a cyclone in appearance. As he stood, they could all see a strange glowing orange marking spreading across the exposed surfaces of his body, until finally the markings had spread fully and solidified into black flame. "Like markings. Sasuke. Kun Wada," started Sakura before trailing of inner shock. "Don't worry, I feel fine," said Sasuke as he looked up, a pair of red eyes with 2 tomo like markings within staring out at them before he looked down and clenched his fist. "In fact, I feel better, more powerful than ever," said the Uchiha before suddenly his eyes seemed to gain a sharp focus onto Naruto. "Let's see you keep up now, Dobi." With that, the Uchiha vanished before appearing directly behind the blonde, sending a back fist at his head. Taken by surprise by the sheer speed just displayed, the blonde was struck full force and sent flying before managing to flip so that he landed on his feet, though he skid nearly another 3 feet. Already the Uchiha was going through a chain of seals and surprised everyone as he breathed out multiple small but fast fireballs. Eyes narrowed in anger, Naruto summoned an energy shield which blocked not only the fireballs but the shuriken the Uchiha had hidden within them. As Sasuke appeared behind him once again, Naruto was ready, ducking the blow aimed at the back of his head and sending out a mule kick with both legs connecting solidly and sending the Uchiha skidding back due to the strength behind it. As they eyed each other after the exchange, Naruto slid into a stance that none of them had seen before from him. He had turned his left side facing Sasuke, his left leg leading and bent while his right hand was cocked back at his hip while his left was out front, his fingers curled like claws. Then, quick as a whip, Naruto shot forward, crossing the distance in a flash, moving much faster than anyone there had thought him capable of. Sasuke's Sharingan was the only thing allowing him to track the movement. However, just because you could see something doesn't mean you could stop it, a lesson he learned as Naruto's right fist was soon embedded within his gut, folding him over with all the breath leaving him and his jaw literally hanging open. His mouth was snapped closed as a left uppercut nailed him in the jaw before, to the eyes of those watching, Naruto's arms became blurs. For Sasuke, however, he could see every punch the blonde fired off coming, yet could do nothing as his body was put through the single worst physical beating he'd ever gotten, with just 11 punches to the chest before a final punch launched him back first into a tree. As Naruto moved to launch himself forward again, he was stopped from going after the Uchiha again by a hand placing itself on his shoulder. Out of the corner of his eye he could see that it was Choji that was holding him back, though not him who spoke up. "Leave him, you still need him for the exam. Let them deal with the troublesome bastard at the tower." The voice was Shikamaru's, only more serious than Naruto had ever heard him being. For a moment he actually considered ignoring him and beating the Uchiha 6 ways to Sunday, but instead gritted his teeth and took the advice as he watched the strange markings on the Uchiha recede before turning his back on him and walking with Choji and Shikamaru. In the distance a pair of Byakugan eyes closed and deactivated as their owner turned away from the scene. He had been doing a routine scan of his surroundings when he had come upon the scene and had watched out of simple curiosity. Because of this he now knew that both the blonde and the Uchiha could be some to be wary of should they face off even if they were still fated to lose. At the same time outside of the forest a gathering was taking place within the only shinobi-run bar and grill within the village. It was a place where only Leaf Shinobi or former Leaf Shinobi of Chunin rank or higher could enter or even know of its existence. It was a place where the ninja were free to let down their emotional masks and be themselves and not the warriors they presented themselves as. At the moment, however, its occupants all sat by in surprise as a number of people entered one by one, who hardly even associated with each other. One by one they arrived and were led into the same room which served as a private VIP room. The first to arrive had come in at the same time and were the famed trio of Yamanaka Inoichi, Nara Shikaku and Akamichi Shuza, the most famous incarnation of the legendary Ino Shika show formation to date. The next to arrive was Aburame Shibi, whose appearance was noticed due to the fact that he never came there except for on the rare occasion. Hyuga Hiyashi was the next to enter and like the previous entry catching all attention due to the rarity of the occasion. Finally came Inazuka Sume and with her throwing everyone for a loop was Ichiraku Tuchi. They greeted each other warmly with none of the usual indifference from when most of them usually met up. Even Hiyashi's emotionless mask had left his features as one by one they all greeted each other with the door sealing itself after opening on last time for the waiter to deliver 4 bottles of sake. In the history of the Hidden Leaf there had never been a generation like them. They were legends within the village. Even if they were not held to the level of the Sannin, they were still legends nonetheless. "It's been a long time since we gathered like this," said Shuza with a nostalgic smile on his face. "Yay, because it's usually not a good thing," said Sume. After she spoke everyone took a moment of respectful silence. The last time they had all gathered had been when they mourned the deaths of Uchiha Makoto and Fugaku after learning of the Uchiha massacre 4 years previous. It had affected them all, especially Shibi and Hiyashi, who had been Fugaku's teammates as genin. Before that it had been to mourn Hiyashi's wife Hitome, who had died during shortly after the birth of her second child the year before. Before that it had been to mourn Minato and Kushina, who had died during what they had thought to be a random attack by the Kyubi and not a sacrificial murder by a madman as they now all knew it to be. "Tuchi, how long have you known about Naruto?" questioned Inoichi with a serious frown as he turned to regard his old friend. It was no wonder why he asked him the question. Not only was Naruto a religiously regular customer at the man's ramen stand, but Tuchi had alongside Sume been Minato's teammate. For a moment all was silent as all eyes turned to the man awaiting his answer. Tuchi, however, was silent, instead pouring himself a bit of sake and taking a quick drink before turning to return Inoichi's stare. "I've known since the first time he came into the stand when he was 4. Said the man seriously, causing several eyes to widen. "And you couldn't tell us?" demanded Hiyashi in a very rare show of anger from him. "I would have if some of you would follow up when given invitations," stated Tuchi, causing several eyes to narrow before widening in understanding before most of the heads bowed in shame. "Still, even I never thought he was this important," mused Tuchi, taking another drink. "A prince of an entire fucking planet," said Inoichi, tossing one straight back in a single go. "Understatement, I went through that packet, all that information made my head hurt," said Hiyashi as he himself took a drink. "To think we're so far behind, and yet so far ahead," said Sume, shaking her head. "It seems a simple concept. From my understanding, our planet is much more hazardous than others. It is no surprise that we have developed differently," stated Shibi. "They may beat us technologically, but as far as physically, that is a completely different matter," said Shuza. "True enough, and that's not even counting what we can do factoring in chakra," said Tuchi. "Still can't help but wonder what they want with us to invite us into space so readily," stated Shikaku with a frown. "Well, I want you brats to step up your training, honestly," came a new voice, surprising everyone, causing Shuza to spew out his sake while Inoichi choked in surprise before they turned to see Jiraiya leaning against a wall. "Damn it, how the hell do you still do that, old man?" exclaimed Sume, pointing at the man, causing Jiraiya to smirk, which only irritated her more before he suddenly turned serious. "As of right now, it doesn't matter what the Jirians want with us. We've just discovered an invasion set to take place on the day of the 3rd exam," stated Jiraiya, causing them all to freeze. The leaders of this attack are the new village called Otogakure. They are led by Orochimaru. Stated Jiraiya. They shouldn't be much trouble even with Orochimaru leading them, sensei. Said Sume. Suna, it seems, will be aiding them. Said Jiraiya, causing her to slam her head on the table. The leaders' summit that sensei is calling won't take place until the next day and the word hasn't even been sent out yet. Said Jiraiya. So we've got a month to prepare. Said Shikaku, his mind already flying through strategies. Whatever you plan, know that me, the old man, and Tsunade will be taking care of Orochimaru. Said Jiraiya. I figured she'd come back once she found out about Naruto. Said Tucci. Apparently the elders told her he died, but we'll handle that another day. Said Jiraiya. With all of the leaders here for the exam, we'll have to utterly crush this invasion. Said Hiyashi contemplatively. Which is why I have missions for all of you, listen up. Said Jiraiya with authority.
So that's it for today. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe to the channel for more awesome stories like this. Thank you. See you all in my next video.